Chapter 159. Yueyao quietly walked along the main road of the airport with the flowers in her arms. This was a place not far from the drop-off area. The taxi arrived with the guests and left with the guests. On the huge overpass, she was the only one walking on the side of the road. Her back view looked lonely. During this time, countless cars brushed past her and almost hit her, but her expression did not change at all. However, the passers-by could not help but feel frightened when they saw her. They stopped their cars from time to time to remind her, "Young lady, it's so late. Why are you walking on the street alone? Where are you going? Get in the car? Take a ride." Yueyao only shook her head. She did not hear what they were saying at all. Whether it was out of concern or other intentions, she just hoped that these noises would be as far away from her as possible. Until a nanny van stopped behind her. Honk, honk, honk. The car honked. The sudden movement gave her a big fright. Yueyao hugged the scattered flowers and turned around in surprise. However, she only saw a pair of particularly glaring lights. She saw the Mercedes-Benz logo and saw the completely dark car window. She frowned and looked at it suspiciously. Just as she was about to turn around, behind her, there were a few more honking sounds. This time, she was completely annoyed. Yueyao hugged the flowers and walked toward the door of the front passenger seat. However, the door of the back seat opened, and a man in a black suit walked out. He looked like a bodyguard. "Miss Yueyao, please get in the car." "Get in the car." Yueyao was suspicious. "What are you doing? Please get in the car." The man repeated again, but his attitude was surprisingly good. Yueyao could not help but look at the back seat. From her angle, she could vaguely see the silhouette of a man. She was a little surprised. From the silhouette of this figure, she immediately thought of Jing Yang. Could it be him? Yueyao walked toward the car door again. However, the bodyguard raised his hand and gently pressed it against her back, pushing her into the car. After some hesitation, Yueyao sat in the back seat. However, she suddenly became reserved. Jing Yang did not speak. He just looked ahead. The bodyguard got into the front passenger seat and closed the door, cutting off all the noise outside the car. The soundproofing of the car was very good. She could even clearly hear the man's steady and quiet breathing beside her. She was at a loss for a moment. She lowered her head and looked at the flowers in her arms that had been crushed by someone's foot. She was even more embarrassed. In his opinion, she must be very stupid. He wanted to throw it away, but he couldn't just open the window and throw it away. Yueyao hugged the flowers tightly in annoyance. She didn't know whether to throw them away or not. She just sat there like a fool. The man beside her didn't say anything, and he didn't even pay attention to her. His eyes were looking out the window, and she didn't know what he was looking at. After a long time he suddenly spoke. "Don't do this kind of thing again." "Such a thing?" Yueyao widened her eyes in surprise. "What's the matter?" Jing Yang did not look at her. Instead he snorted. "What do you think?" Yueyao felt a little wronged. She had traveled thousands of miles to Hong Kong just to pick him up from the airport, but he brushed it off by saying such a thing. No matter how warm her heart was, it was instantly splashed with a basin of cold water. "I know." Yueyao was a little peeved. "I won't do it again." Jing Yang asked again, "Where are you staying? I'll get the chauffeur to send you back." End of chapter. Chapter 160. Just as Yueyao was about to answer, she suddenly realized that she had booked the same hotel as him. If she were to tell him that the hotel she had booked was the hotel that the organizer had arranged for him, wouldn't it seem too deliberate? Yueyao gulped, feeling wronged. She pursed her lips but didn't say anything. Seeing that she was silent, Jing Yang frowned and asked, "Where are you staying?" He repeated his words again, his tone showing his impatience. Yueyao immediately said, "Drop me off at the junction. I'll take a cab back." "I said I'll get the chauffeur to send you. Why are you sending me?" Yueyao was trying to provoke him. She smiled helplessly and said, "Didn't you say so? You told me not to pester you anymore. You can just drop me off at the junction. Don't worry, no matter how capable I am, I won't pester you anymore." Jing Yang silently scrutinized her for a long time. After a long silence he said, "I came back to pick you up on account of your daddy and mommy. Yueyao, Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Because of his words, Yueyao's grievances finally overflowed. She held back her tears, but she stubbornly forced them back. Gritting her teeth, she looked up and said, I don't want you to care about me. Don't care about me. And don't use my daddy and mommy to pressure me. Jingyang, don't go overboard. Jingyang looked at her silently but didn't say a word. Yueyao then realized that his gaze had become even colder. Because of her words, his expression suddenly collapsed. Yueyao bit her lip, knowing that her words had angered him. She didn't say another word. It was so strange. She had lost control once again. Clearly, she wanted to get close to him and win him back. However, the relationship between the two people was once again brought to the freezing point. In the Mu family, everyone dotes on you and spoils you. It's okay for you to be arrogant because of that. But with me, I don't have to indulge you. As Jingyang spoke, the car arrived at the junction. He instructed the chauffeur to stop the car, and the car stopped by the roadside. Jingyang looked out of the window and did not look at her again. Although he didn't say anything, the cold air reminded her that he was chasing her out of the car. Mu Yueyao didn't stay any longer. She hugged the flowers and got out of the car directly. As soon as she got out of the car, the bodyguard got out of the front passenger seat and closed the door. He then returned to the front passenger seat and the car sped away. Mu Yueyao did not turn back to look at the car. It was not until the sound of the engine had faded away that her tears stopped falling. How did it end up like this? Even if it was because of that incident, so many years should be enough, right? In front of him, she had always been humble, patient, pandering, and guilty. He saw it all but remained unmoved. Was she so unforgivable? Even if she was young and ignorant and made a mistake, after so many years, even if he didn't forgive her, he wouldn't look at her with such hatred. If apologizing was useful, she was willing to apologize to him 1,000,000 times. If there was a way to pay for her mistakes, she was willing to do everything she could to repay the past. But the past could no longer be reversed. Why couldn't he forgive her? Mu Yueyao stood by the roadside. At this moment, the street was no longer as busy as before. There were few pedestrians and only cars coming and going. She knew that he wouldn't instruct the chauffeur to turn around. He had really abandoned her. Chapter 161. Mu Yueyao returned to the hotel and walked into the elevator. She wanted to swipe her card, but when she searched all her pockets, she realized that her bag was gone. The card was in her bag, but she couldn't find her bag. Mu Yueyao was stunned. She furrowed her brows. Even when the elevator door slowly closed and started to rise, she was still in a daze. Where was her bag? She remembered that she was carrying it when she went to the airport, but when she came back, she couldn't remember when her bag had suddenly disappeared. When she came back, she walked all the way back and didn't seem to have met anyone. In the end, she hailed a taxi. Yes, when she paid for the taxi, her bag seemed to still be beside her. Mu Yueyao couldn't remember at that moment. Her bag was really gone. Other than the hotel card, her passport and all her other documents were in her bag. Mu Yueyao then realized the seriousness of the matter. Damn it. The money and bank cards didn't matter. Although she had a credit card, the credit card limit was relatively small. Besides, she could cancel it at the bank at any time. But those documents and all kinds of proof, and most importantly, if she lost her room card, where should she stay tonight? Unknowingly, the elevator doors opened again with a ding. When the doors opened, Mu Yueyao looked up. However, when she saw a group of people standing at the door, she was completely stunned again. She bumped into him again, Jingyang. He must have returned to the hotel early, but he didn't appear alone. Besides his manager and assistant, there was also a gorgeously dressed and extremely beautiful girl beside him. She was dressed sexily, and when she smiled, there was a hint of coquettishness. The reason why Mu Yueyao was stunned was because this girl was standing right next to Jingyang without any gap between them. They looked really intimate. Jingyang was originally talking to the girl beside him. When he turned his head and saw Mu Yueyao standing in the elevator, he was also stunned for a moment. He suddenly reached out and held the girl's hand. The girl was also stunned for a moment. Her face immediately turned red, and she held Jingyang's hand back shyly and intimately. The two of them held hands tightly and walked into the elevator together. The hotel's VIP elevator wasn't very big to begin with. When the group of 5 walked into the elevator, Yueyao was immediately squeezed into a corner. She wasn't very tall, and from her angle, she could only see Jingyang and the girl holding hands tightly. She was separated from the two of them by 2 assistants, but she could vaguely feel that they had a close relationship. It was already so late. Where were they going? Furthermore, Jingyang was staying in this hotel. The others were either agents or assistants. What about this girl? It was already so late. Why would she appear together with him? Could it be? Was she the partner the organizer had arranged for Jingyang? It was said that for many celebrities, the organizers would considerately prepare a beautiful girl for the male celebrity to accompany them. During these few days of local activities, this girl would always be by his side, doing whatever he wanted. Many male idols couldn't fall in love during the contract period, let alone get married. However, physiological needs could not be ignored. Therefore, the organizers took these problems into consideration and usually arranged for a girl of such status. Usually, when the celebrity returned to the hotel, the girl would already be waiting in the room. At this time, were they preparing to go out for supper or to go to a nightclub to drink? Chapter 162. At the thought of this, Mu Yueyao's face turned green. Was this the girl that the organizers had assigned to him? Looking at this girl's appearance, she was of the highest quality. However, the air of a prostitute in her movements could not be concealed. In the past, he wouldn't even look at this kind of girl. Now seeing him so close to this girl, so intimate, there was a tacit understanding between the two of them that people couldn't bear to look at. Mu Yueyao had to admit that she was jealous. Why did he suddenly become so depraved? Or was he doing it on purpose for her to see? But how did he know that she would appear in this hotel? Mu Yueyao's emotions were in a mess. Little did she know that while she was silently observing Jingyang, the girl beside Jingyang was also silently observing her. Seeing that Mu Yueyao was staring at Jingyang, the girl snorted and laughed. "You're Jingyang's fan, aren't you?" As soon as she said this, everyone looked in Mu Yueyao's direction. Except for Jingyang. His gaze never fell on her. He only looked silently in the direction of the elevator door. The girl tightened her grip on Jingyang's arm again and said mockingly, "As a fan, can't you be a little more sensible? Jingyang has already made it clear that he doesn't like sightseeing fans, especially sightseeing fans who chase him to the hotel." Mu Yueyao looked at her silently. Not to be outdone, she retorted, "And who are you?" This rhetorical question stumped her. The girl looked at Jingyang, and then looked at Mu Yueyao. She snorted coldly and said, "What right do you have to ask? How can you be so sure that I'm a fan?" Mu Yueyao suddenly said mockingly, "Why don't you suspect that I'm a paparazzi?" When the girl heard this, her expression changed and she looked at Jingyang worriedly. Jingyang finally turned his head and glanced indifferently at Mu Yueyao. But he still didn't say anything and turned his head back. The girl furrowed her brows worriedly. She knew that Jingyang especially hated paparazzi. If this girl was really a paparazzi, then if the news of her spending the night with Jingyang got out, Jingyang would definitely be angry. But she was a little suspicious. It wasn't that she was biased against the paparazzi. Instead, as paparazzi, they often had to stay up all night just to wait for news. It was common for them to stay up all night. The girl in front of her was prettier than her. One had to know that the reason she was able to reach this step was because of her one-in-a-million looks. She had always been proud of her looks, but when she saw Mu Yueyao, she suddenly felt ashamed of her own inferiority. In other words, if she had such a beautiful face, why would she want to work as a paparazzi? The girl was surprised and suspicious. But Mu Yueyao turned her head to Jingyang and asked with the aura of a main wife, "Jingyang, who is she?" Jingyang retorted coldly, "What does it have to do with you? Is she your date?" Mu Yueyao went straight to the point. Jingyang stared at her silently for a moment. Then he suddenly smirked and said, "She's my date." "Date?" Mu Yueyao's lips twitched violently. "What date? You don't have to ask about that." Just as he finished speaking, the elevator happened to reach the first floor and opened with a ding. Chapter 163. Jingyang did not look at Mu Yueyao again. Holding the girl's hand, he slowly left the elevator with a few managers and assistants. Mu Yueyao lowered her head and did not look at his back. She stubbornly turned her face away and allowed the elevator door to slowly close. The elevator door closed again. Mu Yueyao did not have a hotel card, so she did not know which floor the elevator would stop at. When the elevator door opened again, a couple holding hands walked in. Seeing that there was someone else in the elevator, the couple, who were originally entangled with each other, was startled and restrained themselves a little. However, when they entered the elevator and saw Mu Yueyao with her head lowered, their actions became unrestrained again. Standing in the elevator, the two began to hug each other intimately. They were glued to each other like glue, hating that they had to separate. Through the reflection of the elevator door, Mu Yueyao saw the two stuck together. For some reason, the scene of Jingyang and that girl holding hands intimately flashed before her eyes. Her heart instantly sank. Woo woo woo. Mu Yueyao's heart felt as if it was being wrenched. She felt so silly. Since young Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir had doted on her. In addition, her two elder brothers Mu Yichen and Yun Tianyu had doted on her all the way. No one had ever treated her like this. She admitted that she was partly responsible for that matter. But, did she not even have the right to atone for her sins in his eyes? Was he taking revenge on her? Or did he purely like that girl? No matter which answer it was, Mu Yueyao could not bear to see it. Mu Yueyao's heart sank fiercely. She hugged her knees and squatted on the floor. All of a sudden, she did not even have the strength to cry. The couple at the side was shocked when they heard her suddenly cry. The girl in front of them suddenly lost control of her emotions, causing them to lose interest in being intimate with her. The girl among the couple walked to Mu Yueyao's side, bent down gently and asked in Cantonese, "Miss, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Mu Yueyao only cried and did not respond to her. The girl was kind and patiently asked, "Which floor are you staying on? Are you from Hong Kong? Or are you here for a vacation? Do you have any companions? What happened?" When Mu Yueyao heard the girl's impatient voice, she felt that the world was getting darker and darker. She wished she could bury her head in her arms, but at the same time, she wished she could drown herself in the universe. It would be best if no one could find her. She felt that she was really stupid. For the sake of her sweetheart, she had followed him all the way to Hong Kong, but she had never expected to be humiliated like this. His mood was so low that it couldn't get any lower. The girl stood up in a daze. She glanced at her boyfriend and sighed helplessly. Chu and I isn't even willing to tell. She screamed so miserably. What a sinister technique. Could it be, because she was heartbroken? The boy shook his head and replied in Cantonese, "You don't need to control him. Just go to the lobby manager." When the elevator reached the first floor, the couple walked out. The girl wanted to help Mu Yueyao up, but seeing that she didn't even have the strength to stand up, she simply squatted beside her and accompanied her. The boy hurriedly went to find the lobby manager. Not long after, the boy rushed over with the lobby manager. When he saw Mu Yueyao, the lobby manager frowned slightly and suddenly asked tentatively, "Miss Yueyao?" Mu Yueyao still didn't move. She only buried her head, as if she couldn't hear anything. Chapter 164. Just as everyone was at a loss, Mu Yueyao suddenly buried her face in her arms and muttered painfully, "I thought everything would pass." "What do you mean?" No one knew what she was muttering about. Mu Yueyao suddenly lost control and said, "If only I was the one who died back then." She covered her ears and closed her eyes. Suddenly, she felt as if she could see Jingyang's soulless back outside the corridor of the hospital. People were coming and going. In the operating theater, doctors and nurses rushed in one after another, looking anxious. Jingyang's face was pale as he stared at her angrily and suspiciously. Mu Yueyao looked at her hands again, and suddenly realized that her hands were covered in bloodstains. The person lying in the operating theater was his closest relative, his mother. Because of her, it was all because of her that the mother and son were separated forever. Jingyang dashed over and grabbed her by the shoulders. His eyes were bloodshot. "Mu Yueyao, what do you want?" The nightmare repeated itself. Mu Yueyao was so shocked that she broke out in cold sweat. She choked and said, "I didn't want to. I'd rather the person lying in there was me." "Then why don't you die?" Jingyang lost control and roared at her. Mu Yueyao was so frightened that she curled up into a ball. She leaned against the wall and slid down slowly. If anything happens to my mother, I'll hate you forever. With that, Jing Yang turned around and left. At that time, she did not even have the courage to look at him. I'd rather die. I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Mu Yueyao covered her ears as if she was hallucinating. In the midst of the heavy traffic, she was pushed hard and felt the world spinning. She propped herself up again and looked back. However, all she heard was the screams of countless passers-by. Oh my God! A big truck ran over a living person. It ran over her body. It's definitely useless. Oh my God, there's blood everywhere. It's so scary. Quick, call the police and the ambulance. Mu Yueyao got up from the ground in a daze and staggered to stabilize her center of gravity. However, she saw that the scene not far away was already surrounded by people. Many girls screamed in fear. Order was once in chaos. There were people around her constantly asking about her well-being, but she couldn't hear anything clearly. The traffic police came quickly. She had just passed through the crowd when the police came to pull up the cordon. The driver stood by the side, looking at the people on the ground and sighing. Yueyao finally pushed the crowd aside, but she saw a scene that she would never forget in her life. The woman was crushed by the huge wheels of the truck. Half of her body was exposed as she lay on her back, blood foaming at the corner of her mouth. Help! Help! Mu Yueyao finally reacted and screamed in panic. Help! Help! Is the ambulance here? She only had one thought at that time, and that was to lift the car and drag out the person under the wheels. Therefore, she rushed forward without a care for her own safety and hugged the huge tire of the truck with both hands. The traffic police on the side immediately pulled her back. Save them! Save them! Mu Yueyao screamed at the top of her lungs. Save my mom! She's my mom! Save! Save my mom! Mother Jing's gentle words seemed to echo in her ears. You like Yang Yang? When you grow up, marry Yang Yang, okay? Okay. That's great. Then from now on, you'll call me mom like Jing Yang? Chapter 165. She felt like she was drowning in a sea of darkness. When Mu Yueyao woke up, she realized that she was lying on a bed. When she came back to her senses and sat up on the bed, she suddenly realized that she was in a ward. A ward. Mu Yueyao held her forehead. She had completely lost her memory of what had happened before she came to the ward. She didn't know what had happened. She couldn't remember what had happened at all. You're awake? A stern and familiar voice came from the side. Mu Yueyao looked in the direction of the voice and saw Mu Yichen sitting by the bed. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit, and his back was as straight as it could be. She didn't know why, but no matter what he was wearing, he gave off the impression that he was dressed in military attire. Mu Yueyao was stunned. Brother? Yeah. Mu Yichen snorted coldly and didn't say a word. He frowned and adjusted his posture. He sneered expressionlessly. You came to Hong Kong without your family's permission, and went through all sorts of trouble. Do you want to go to heaven? No, I didn't. Mu Yichen suddenly leaned over and held her chin. His tone was stiff as he said, Look at you now. You're so haggard. How did you get yourself into this state? Mu Yueyao slapped his hand away gloomily. She turned around and looked at the television. Through the reflection on the screen, she indeed saw her extremely haggard face. She couldn't recover from the setback. Mu Yichen couldn't bear to yell at her when he saw her pitiful look. He raised his eyebrows and asked, What's the matter? Why do you look so aggrieved? Brother. Mu Yueyao's voice trembled like a little lamb, and she looked even more pitiful. Why are you yelling at me? Mu Yichen touched the bridge of his nose. When did I yell at you? You were yelling at me. Mu Yueyao looked like she was about to cry. Look at your face. You look like you're going to eat me up. Eat me up. So exaggerated? Mu Yichen nervously turned around. Behind Yueyao's back, he secretly took out his phone to take a picture of himself and touched his face. Oh, he didn't seem to be very fierce. However, his expression seemed to be a little more serious. It seemed so. Mu Yichen cleared his throat and looked at Yueyao. She pursed her lips and looked like she wanted to cry, but no tears came out. All right. His tone became a little warmer. He deliberately made it soft, as if he was afraid of scaring her to tears. However, it was not hard to hear that he was angry. Did you come to Hong Kong to look for Jingyang? Looks like they're arguing again. No. Mu Yichen did not believe it. However, the truth was that she and Jingyang did not even speak much this time. Ever since that incident, Jingyang's attitude towards her had become very cold. She knew very well that he hated her because of that incident. However, she thought that besides hatred, he should at least show some concern and care for her, right? This time, her heart was really hurt badly. In the Mu family, she had always been the high and mighty princess. She had never suffered such humiliation. These few days in Hong Kong, she could no longer maintain her composure in the face of his indifference. It didn't matter how he humiliated her. However, when she saw that woman appear beside him, all of her psychological defenses crumbled completely. Chapter 166. All right. Mu Yichen's heart ached too. He had always doted on his younger sister, but now that she was being bullied outside, his heart ached terribly. Still, he was exasperated at her failure to live up to his expectations. Why did he keep an eye on that B******? His sister was the Mu family's beloved princess. There was a long line of men courting her, so why should she be bullied by that B******? Mu Yichen was furious. He could not wait to chop that B*** into pieces. However, when he looked at Yue Yao's aggrieved face, which was about to crumple into a ball, he tenderly reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Oh, don't cry anymore. As if coaxing a baby in swaddling clothes, he gently patted Yue Yao's back and coaxed, "All right, don't cry anymore, okay?" Yue Yao was furious. On one hand, her face was flushed red, and on the other, she was speechless. "Brother, I'm not a child anymore. Besides, I'm not crying. In my eyes, you'll always be a child. You'll never grow up." As Mu Yichen spoke, he tucked her hair behind her ear. His voice was as mellow as red wine. It was mellow and mellow, yet it made one's heart feel inexplicably at ease. When she was young, no one dared to bully her because of her two brothers' protection. Due to her brother's love, she became very arrogant and willful. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir even despised Mu Yichen and Yun Tianyu for spoiling her too much. What did Mu Yichen say? He righteously retorted, "She's my sister and I dote on her. Who dares to have an opinion?" At that time, Mu Yichen was young and frivolous. Even Mu Yaja could not do anything about his son. Yun Tianyu's attitude toward Yue Yao was more subdued. However, whoever made Yue Yao cry, although Yun Tianyu's methods were not as harsh as Mu Yichen's, the consequences were always the worst. As a result, Yue Yao became more and more arrogant. Yue Yao also knew that her personality had been spoiled by her two brothers. She had also thought about changing it, and had put it into action. She was much more mature than before. But even so, these two clown brothers still couldn't bear to see her suffer any grievances. Yue Yao blushed a little. She was actually a little shy, but when she heard Mu Yichen's comforting voice, for some reason, tears welled up in her eyes. She rubbed the corners of her eyes and felt like crying. "Brother, he really doesn't want me anymore," Mu Yichen snorted. "It's not that he doesn't want you, it's you who doesn't want him. He's not good enough for you, eh?" Upon hearing Mu Yichen's words, Yue Yao could no longer hold it in. Her tears finally soaked Mu Yichen's clothes. Mu Yichen's heart ached even more. He felt that the hot tears were about to flow into his heart. "No matter what, you'll always be the most precious in your brother's heart." "Brother." Mu Yue Yao dropped all her defenses and hugged him tightly. She did not want her tears to be exposed under the sun. She would rather bury these tears in her brother's chest. Mu Yichen did not say anything. He raised his hand and gently stroked her back as a form of consolation. His heart, however, felt as if it was torn apart. He hugged Yue Yao's head into the crook of his neck. When he looked up again, his gaze was as cold as a knife. This B*****. Over and over again he had made his sister sad and heartbroken. It was fine if it was just brushes before. This time he would not tolerate it. Chapter 167. TV Station Interview Room. When Jingyang returned to the dressing room after finishing the program, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. The program was a recorded broadcast. The Hong Kong TVB variety program always revolved around gossip. Jingyang endured and ended the interview patiently. He was exhausted. As soon as he returned to the dressing room, He collapsed on the sofa and did not want to move anymore. Tired. Exhausted. At this moment, his mind was filled with Mu Yueyao's disappointed face. According to the hotel manager, a girl fainted in the elevator yesterday. She was rushed to the hospital, and there was no news of her since then. He suspected that it was Mu Yueyao, because her name could no longer be found in the hotel's guest information. She had already checked out of the hotel. What happened? She fainted? What happened? Countless questions filled his head, and he had a splitting headache. Yesterday he agreed to a dinner party and the investor asked this girl to accompany him. He did not expect to bump into her in the elevator. Jing Yang did not pay attention to her, but he did not expect that something would happen not long after he left. Jing Yang, are you tired? Do you want to drink some coffee? Beside him, his assistant kindly served him a freshly brewed coffee. When Jing Yang smelled the bitter taste of the instant coffee, he could not help but want to vomit. He covered his mouth and waved his hand. The assistant immediately understood and left with the coffee. She knew that Jing Yang's mood was not very good these 2 days. No. It should be said that since he stepped into the entertainment industry, he had never shown a real smile. There was once a program that asked him why he wanted to enter the entertainment industry. He was a top economics student at a 985 university. However, he did not choose to pursue a postgraduate study in economics. Instead, he chose to enter the entertainment industry. Although Jing Yang's foreign trade conditions were good, there were better choices for him other than the entertainment industry. However, Jing Yang said that he entered the entertainment industry to repay his debts. He and his mother owed a huge debt, as high as 100 million. He had to repay this debt. This statement shocked the entertainment industry and fans. It even topped the entertainment industry's trending searches. Jing Yang had a debt of over 100 million. Some smart fans looked up Jing Yang's information and did not find any debt background. There was no record of him being executed. A young man who did not gamble, did not have any bad habits, and came from a clean family background. Where did this debt of over 100 million come from? No one knew. After that, there were also people who asked Jing Yang out of curiosity to verify the debt. However, Jing Yang avoided answering them, and only said that he would retire from the entertainment industry after he earned 100 million. Therefore, Jing Yang's fans were in a dilemma. They wanted to spend money on him, but they were also worried that if they spent too much money, their idol would leave the industry after earning 100 million yuan. But there were also some media outlets that said that this was all a publicity stunt. However, Mu Yueyao knew where the 100 million debt Jing Yang was talking about came from. Jing Yang collapsed on the sofa and let his body sink into it. Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. However, he remained unmoved, until the door of the dressing room was forcefully pushed open with a bang. Everyone except Jing Yang looked at the door, and saw a tall man with a domineering aura standing at the door. His eyes were cold. Everyone was so scared that they didn't even dare to breathe. Logically speaking, if someone suddenly broke into the dressing room backstage, the assistant would definitely rush forward to chase them out. Chapter 168. Logically speaking, if someone were to barge into the dressing room backstage, the assistant would rush forward to chase them out. However, when Mu Yichen stood in front of them, no one dared to step forward due to his intimidating aura. Jing Yang raised his head to look at Mu Yichen. He, too, saw the pain and fury in his eyes. He knew who he was here for. When they were young, he had always been the elder brother whom he respected the most. He and Yin Tianyu were also the ones who took care of him the most. Now, however, he could only see disappointment and anger in the man's eyes. Jing Yang, I'm warning you. From now on, keep your distance from my sister. Don't go near her. Do you hear me? Jing Yang did not look surprised when he heard this. He only said blandly, you should be saying this to Yueyao, right? Who's the one pestering who? She's the one who keeps disturbing my work and affecting my life. Yet you want me to keep my distance from her? I've already done enough to keep my distance. Mu Yichen was especially furious when he heard this. He tightened his grip on Jing Yang. His fingers turned white from exerting so much force that he gritted his teeth. Is it so difficult for you to admit that you like Yueyao? Can't the two of you get along well? Why are you still angry? It's been so many years, shouldn't it be over by now? Jin Yang raised his brows coldly, but did not deny it. Instead he smirked. So what if I love her? Muichen was stunned. What was this? What do you mean by, so what if I love her? I hate her. Jin Yang's expression was frosty. Muichen did not know what to do with his icy expression. He had never seen Jin Yang with such a cold expression before. Hate her? Do you know how much I hate her? Jin Yang retorted. If it were you, what would you do? You've lost your loved one. Can you still accept her? It's not her fault. That's because she's your sister. Jin Yang's words left Muichen speechless. She's your younger sister. She can be forgiven even if she has done something wrong. Muichen could not help but ask, what about you? Don't you love her? That matter wasn't entirely her fault. You're just passing on the pain of losing a loved one to Yueyao. Don't mention that name to me again. Jin Yang's face was filled with disgust. He was extremely sensitive to this name. He frowned and turned his face away, not wanting to listen anymore. However, Muichen did not take Jin Yang's rebellion seriously, and insisted on bringing it up. Aren't you afraid of losing Yueyao? For the current me, there's nothing I'm afraid of losing. Jin Yang's voice remained calm. I just don't want to see her again. Before Muichen could say anything, Yueyao's melancholic voice came from behind him. Brother, there's nothing more to say. He was stunned and turned around in shock. He saw Yueyao standing at the door, her body swaying slightly as if she could not stand straight. However, she was still trying her best to suppress some of her emotions, and put on an extremely perfunctory smile. Jin Yang, you have to remember what you said. I'll pay back what I owe you. But you have to pay back what you owe me. Jin Yang was stunned as well. He did not expect Yueyao to be standing outside the door, and hear the entire conversation between him and Muichen. Chapter 169. Jin Yang, remember what you've said. I'll repay what I owe you, but you'll have to pay back what you owe me too. Jin Yang was stunned too. He did not expect that Muichen and Yueyao would be standing outside the door and overhear their conversation. For a moment he could not recover from his shock. Yueyao, who was standing before him, looked too haggard. All this while, she had always been a beautiful and noble princess in front of everyone. Now, without makeup, she could not hide her sickly haggardness. He did not know that she had not eaten or drunk for 2 whole days. Her eyes were red as if she had cried. For a moment his heart ached. Muichen held his forehead helplessly. Initially, he only wanted to come alone and did not want her to come along. However, she stubbornly insisted on coming along. He had no choice but to let her wait outside the door. He did not expect Jin Yang to say such heartless words. Jin Yang glared at Yueyao silently. Yueyao did not say a word. She looked back at him with an indescribable disappointment in her eyes. She expected to hear many cruel words from him, but she did not expect him to be so eager to draw a line between them. She thought about the girl who had been beside him last night, holding his arm so intimately. They were together the whole night, right? What exactly happened between the two of them? Yueyao did not dare to think about it. Let's end it here. Other than settling accounts, we don't owe each other anything. As Yueyao said this, she suddenly raised her hand and casually took off a ring on her ring finger. She threw it on the floor. It was a rose gold ring. She bought it at a store and it was not expensive. When they were young, she often stuck to Jin Yang. The two could be considered childhood sweethearts. Whether it was the Mu family or Jin Yang's mother, they were sure that they would get married when they grew up. At that time, the two little guys were very close. Other than Muichen and Yin Tianyu, it seemed that only Jin Yang could tolerate her princess-like temper. During Christmas in junior high school, Jin Yang used the money he earned from his part-time job to buy a rose gold ring, and made a promise with her. He said to her, Yueyao, this is my engagement ring for you. When I grow up, I'll marry you and make you Mrs. Jing, okay? At that time, there was no such thing as puppy love between the two of them. It was just that both of them had too many fantasies about their future. Yueyao had been doted on since she was a child. She was the youngest and only daughter of the Mu family. She was the princess. Jin Yang didn't come from a rich family like her, but the Mu family took special care of him. Jin Yang's mother did not remarry. It was not easy for her to raise Jin Yang alone. Originally, She had planned to give birth to the child and return to the countryside to develop. The cost of living in the capital was too high, and it was hard to get by. But how could Mu Yueyao bear to let Jingyang leave? Hence, Yin Shishir offered to cover Jingyang's living expenses and school fees. Only then did Jingyang and his mother officially take root in the capital. However, all these beautiful things were completely shattered because of an accident. After that incident, Jingyang not only felt love for Mu Yueyao, but also hatred. Originally, this accident should not have happened. For the first time in his life, he hated her willfulness. Watch first Zue new chapter section. Please go to Hall of Visitors, mobile address. Chapter 170. For the first time in his life, he hated her stubbornness. However, all this hatred was suddenly thrown into chaos when the rose gold ring fell to the ground. The ring had entered his line of sight without warning and made him realize that to her, this ring was so cheap. No matter how many years had passed, she had always worn it on her finger. But now, she had taken it off and thrown it in front of him. Mu Yueyao's face was expressionless and he couldn't tell what it was. She smiled sadly, and just when he thought she was about to cry, she said lightly, "Let's end it here." "Let's end it here." Mu Yueyao smiled coldly and said, "I should give up too. In the future, as you wish, I won't pester you anymore." As she said this, she walked over and held Mu Yichen's hand. She forced a smile and said, "Brother, let's go." Mu Yichen looked at Jingyang and then turned back to look at Yueyao. He couldn't bear it and asked, "Have you made up your mind?" "Yeah. I've let go. Why do I have to do such stupid things?" Mu Yueyao took a deep breath as if she had finally let go of something that had been weighing on her mind. She smiled and said, "It's time for me to start my own life, isn't it?" Mu Yichen's lips twitched, but he didn't say anything. He only sighed and hugged her lovingly before turning to leave. It was only after the siblings left that Jingyang seemed to come back to his senses. He walked over and bent down gently to pick up the rose gold ring. He wiped the ring clean with his cufflinks and wrapped it in his palm. His assistant and manager looked at each other and frowned, but they didn't say anything. Beijing Moon Palace, a top-class private clubhouse. In a luxurious private room, Mu Yueyao leaned lazily on the sofa. She was wearing a black mid-length dress that hugged her exquisite figure. Her hair was slightly messy and she had only put on some foundation makeup. However, at that moment, the music was loud and the lights were dim. As the light shone on her exquisite features, she looked a little dispirited and lazy. On the table, the goblets had toppled over, and the beer bottles were all over the place. Several handsome and beautiful male models were standing on the small stage, holding microphones and trying their best to show off their voices. These models were all the top male models of the Moon Palace. Whether it was in terms of figure or appearance, they were all ranked in the top 5. After returning from Hong Kong, Yueyao hid from everyone and secretly took root in the Moon Palace. The Moon Palace was a high-class clubhouse that combined entertainment and hotel. It had a bar, a K-room and a bedroom. She turned off her phone and hid her whereabouts from everyone. She played in the Moon Palace every day. When they were tired from singing, they would drink. When they were drunk, they would return to the hotel to rest. When she woke up, she did not have time to eat and continued to drink in the private room. She felt lonely drinking alone, so she spent a lot of money. A few male models rushed into the private room to drink with her, get drunk with her, go crazy with her, and play with her. This kind of feeling was really good. It was carefree, crazy, and incisive. When he was drunk, he felt as if the whole world was spinning, as if he was floating in the clouds. At that time, even if the sky fell, it had nothing to do with her. She didn't need to think about the person in her heart. She just needed to find her own happiness. But even if she was drunk, she still missed him. His face appeared in her mind. Before she realized it, her face was already covered in tears. Chapter 171. At the Mu residence. Mu Yichen tried calling Yueyao's cell phone for the 154th time, but it was turned off. This time he was really furious. What was going on? Could it be that her cell phone ran out of battery? No matter how many times he called, Yueyao did not pick up. After returning from Hong Kong, it was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. He did not know where she went. She was unreasonable. Although he knew that nothing would happen to Yueyao, he was still worried. Just as Mui-chen was about to explode with anger, Muyaja suddenly returned. When he opened the door, he saw Mui-chen holding his cell phone. His face was as black as a sheet of paper. He curled his lips and asked calmly, "Is little sister not back yet?" Yeah. Mui-chen was obviously guilty. He felt that it was his fault for not taking good care of Yueyao. Muyaja raised his wrist and looked at his watch. Yueyao had been missing for 3 days and 3 nights. Even if she was fooling around, she should have had enough. "Did you look for her?" Mui-chen nodded helplessly. "I did." "Did you tell her second brother?" "No. I didn't. I didn't dare to tell you. You should still be in the hospital with Natalia. He didn't know about this." Mui-chen paused and suddenly sighed helplessly. "I thought that although she was naughty and unreasonable, she shouldn't have gone overboard, right? She disappeared the moment she came back from Hong Kong. I don't know where she went." As Mui-chen spoke, he became angry again. Other than anger, he was more worried. "Why are you so anxious?" Muyaja, however, did not show much anxiety. Clearly, he should be the one worrying the most at this moment. Yet he appeared calm and composed. Mui-chen was even more surprised. "Dad, aren't you anxious? Why are you in a hurry?" Muyaja asked casually. "Has your precious little sister been this willful since she was young?" "But there must be a limit to being willful." Mui-chen crossed his arms in anger. "This is too much. She doesn't know how to go home every day. What exactly does she want?" Muyaja raised his eyebrows slightly and said coldly, "In the end, it's all because you spoiled her." Mui-chen was speechless. He glanced coldly at Muyaja and quietly complained, "Daddy, you seem to be the one who dotes on little sister the most and spoils her the most." "Yes." Muyaja did not deny it at all. "I pampered her. Do you have a problem with that?" Mui-chen suffered another setback. He did not dare to contradict Muyaja. Although he had already grown up, Muyaja was still an extremely revered father figure to him. Mui-chen sighed. Muyaja frowned and said, "Don't worry about this. Go and rest early." "Then what about little sister? I will find her." Mui-chen frowned and hesitated for a while. In the end, he could not help but say, "Daddy, if you find little sister and she is in a bad mood these few days, please don't take it to heart if she says a few words to contradict you." Muyaja did not say anything and only said, "Go to bed early." "Oh." Mui-chen returned to his room. This was because he knew that Muyaja must have made a decision by saying so. Since they were young, Yueyao had run away from home many times in a fit of anger. Every time, only Muyaja could find her. Moreover, the two of them had a tacit understanding of where she was hiding. Chapter 172. However, no matter where Yueyao hid, she would not tell anyone. It was as if the father and daughter were telepathic. How enviable. When Mui-chen returned to his room, Muyaja went out of the house and went to the garage. When he saw that Yueyao's Maserati was still at home, he smiled in satisfaction. The car was parked at home. This was a secret signal between the father and daughter. It meant that she was at the Moon Palace. The Moon Palace. From the name, it was obvious who had invested in this top-notch private club in Beijing. Originally, the Mu family had a few private clubs, but they were usually places for business. The Moon Palace was built because Yueyao was obsessed with singing when she was in junior high. Therefore, he was worried that his daughter would not have a good singing environment, so he built the Moon Palace. There was a princess box in the Moon Palace. The sound system inside was at least $1 million. Just the sound system alone was worth a few $1,000,000. The duplex box was more than 700 square meters. They had hired the top international choreographer to design an especially beautiful stage. It could accommodate hundreds of people and even hold a small fan club. When she was young, Yueyao was definitely the envy of all the students in school. At her birthday party, all the celebrities she liked would appear at her birthday party. There were even celebrities who were proud to attend her birthday party. The scariest thing was that the value of anyone who could attend her birthday party would definitely double. She was at the Moon Palace? Muyaja started the car almost without hesitation and sped toward the Moon Palace. When he arrived at the Moon Palace, the hall was brightly lit. A row of people was in front of the switchboard. They were at a loss. When they saw Muyaja, It was as if they had seen their savior. Chairman Mu is here. A group of waiters came over with bitter faces. They surrounded Mu Yaja and complained at the same time. Chairman Mu, young miss doesn't let us into the box. She asked for a lot of alcohol. We don't dare to refuse. Previously, the two managers advised her not to drink. They even lost their jobs. This is not important. You should go and take a look. If she continues drinking like this, her body will collapse sooner or later. Mu Yaja frowned, but his expression was still calm. He looked around and raised a finger to signal them to be quiet. The group immediately fell silent. I'll go look for her. You guys stay outside and don't come in. Everyone hurriedly nodded. Several managers escorted Mu Yaja to the door of the room. Although the room was soundproof, they could still hear Mu Yaja singing at the top of his lungs. Mu Yaja frowned slightly and sighed helplessly. He reached out and pushed the door open. On the stage, the lights were dazzling. Yueao Mu stood on the stage, surrounded by lights, holding a microphone and humming drunkenly. Surrounded by the stage lights, she couldn't see who had walked in. As soon as Mu Yaja walked in, the male models accompanying Yueao immediately bowed and retreated. He didn't disturb her immediately. Instead, he sat on the sofa and silently watched his daughter go crazy. When he looked at the song ordering machine, he was shocked. More than 200 songs. Sad people don't listen to slow songs. Goodbye. Exclusive breakup. The last snow. I just want to say goodbye. A typical lovelorn song. Mu Yaja felt sorry for her, and wanted to laugh at the same time. This little brat had lit up all the heartbroken love songs. Yueao Mu was still singing. Give up, don't struggle needlessly, forget him, love is not so complicated. Chapter 173. Halfway through her sobs, she couldn't continue singing anymore. Mu Yueao fell onto the stage, unable to recover from the setback. Seeing that she had stopped singing, Mu Yaja reached out and poked the music machine to stop the music. The deafening music in the huge private room stopped abruptly. As Mu Yueao had been drinking, her reaction was a little sluggish. It took her a while to realize that someone had touched the music machine. She looked in the direction of the music machine. Although her mind was a little hazy, she could still recognize the man sitting on the sofa. She suddenly felt guilty and aggrieved. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Daddy. No matter how angry he was, he could not bring himself to be angry at her soft and coquettish call. He sighed and gently patted the area beside him. Frowning slightly, he said, Come here, the floor is cold. Yueao listened to him and obediently got up from the floor. She walked over to him, swaying step by step. She was clearly walking towards his side, but when she reached his side, her legs went soft and she collapsed on his body. Mu Yaja carried her lovingly in his arms and gently rubbed her tear-stained eyes. There was a rare tenderness in his eyes. It was no wonder that Yin Shishir was always jealous. Before Yueao was born, she had already mentally prepared herself that if she gave birth to a daughter, this daughter would definitely compete with her for favor. But she hadn't expected that Mu Yaja would be so biased. After being married for decades, although the husband and wife were glued to each other like glue, they were still incomparably loving. They weren't like an old couple who had been married for many years, treating each other with respect and retaining the feelings of their youth. But as his daughter gradually grew up, Mu Yaja placed a lot of focus on Yueao. Yin Shishir had repeatedly emphasized that a grown daughter couldn't be kept at home. No matter what, his daughter had to get married. However, Mu Yaja said that it was because his daughter was going to get married sooner or later that he had to dote on her. He doted on her so much that in the future, if his future son-in-law didn't dote on his daughter as much as he did, he wouldn't bear to hand his daughter over to someone else. Yin Shishir was already considered a Buddhist. But there were many times when she would still be a little jealous of her daughter. This was especially so when she saw Mu Yaja looking at her daughter dotingly. Her heart ached and she could not help but feel envious. Yueao took the opportunity to lean her head on his shoulder and didn't say a word. When Mu Yaja saw this, he frowned and laughed. What's the matter? Who made my little princess angry this time? He was pretending that he didn't know what had happened between her and Jing Yang. Yueao wasn't willing to tell him either. How could she possibly complain to Mu Yaja? Even if she had been wrong, she wouldn't tell him. She didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he got angry with Jing Yang because of this. If Muyaja got angry and really wanted to deal with Jing Yang, the entire entertainment industry would be shaken. This was between her and Jing Yang. She didn't want to implicate anyone else. Moreover, she had drunk alcohol and was in a daze. Perhaps she was tired of crying and was tired of it. Now that her tears had dried, she quietly snuggled up in Muyaja's arms. Finally, she felt that the whole world had quieted down. She was so tired from crying that she felt like her head was swollen and hot. She didn't say anything and Muyaja didn't force her either. Chapter 174. Muyaja didn't force her. She didn't know why, but Muyueyao felt her heart calm down when she was by his side. She didn't say anything and didn't know if she was crying. She just wrapped her arms around his waist, sobbing and feeling wronged. Muyaja gently scratched the bridge of her nose and asked gently, "Have you had enough fun outside?" "I'm done." "Then come home with Daddy?" When Yueyao heard this, she shook her head vigorously. Muyaja couldn't help but laugh. "What's the matter? Is there a fierce tiger at home? Don't want to go back?" "Yes," Yueyao said seriously. "I'm afraid that Mommy will eat me up." Muyaja said, "Mommy doesn't know about you playing outside." Why? That clown brother of yours kept it a secret for you. He said that you went on vacation." "Then how did you find out?" Muyaja raised his eyebrows and reminded her helplessly. "I saw that he was so anxious these past few days. Although he pretended to be calm in front of your mommy, how could he hide it from me? When I saw that your car was parked in the basement, it meant that you went to the Moon Palace." Realization dawned on Yueyao. She lowered her head guiltily and admitted her mistake sadly. "I'm sorry to have made Daddy worry again. If it's possible." Muyaja hugged her tightly. "Daddy wants to worry about you for the rest of his life." When Yueyao heard this, her heart trembled violently. She didn't know why, but she felt a little sad. She didn't dare to look up at him. After the alcohol had subsided, she suddenly felt that her behavior these past few days had been a little too willful. As Muyaja hugged Yueyao, he couldn't help but feel emotional. This daughter of his meant something different to him. This was the child that he had nurtured with Yun Shishir for the past 10 months. Since the day Yun Shishir was pregnant, he had been taking care of her carefully. At the same time, he fantasized about whether the xiaobao in her stomach was a son or a daughter. He sighed with emotion as he held up Yueyao's hand. Her fingers were slender, fair and slender. Such a beautiful hand also proved that his beloved daughter had finally grown up. The princess in the castle, who was ignorant of worldly affairs, finally had the 7 emotions and 6 desires. She was no longer dejected over matters of the heart. She still remembered that when she was just born, her small and delicate body was just enough for her to support with her 2 hands. Now, she had already grown to be so slender and elegant. Time really passed too quickly. It was like quicksand on one's fingertips, impossible to grasp. Muyaja gently tucked her hair behind her ear and said gently, "You will always be Daddy's princess. If you are unhappy, of course Daddy will feel it." When Yueyao heard this, she didn't know why, but her tears, which had already subsided, suddenly overflowed again. Her eyes were clearly hurting from crying, but she couldn't stop the tears from gushing out. She hugged Muyaja's shoulder and choked with sobs. "I won't marry in the future. I want to be with Daddy and Mommy for the rest of my life." When Muyaja heard this, he almost blurted out, "Okay." His daughter said that she didn't want to marry. This was what he hoped for the most. It was said that there were only 2 happy days when a son was born. The first was the day he was born, and the second was the day he married his wife. It was also said that from the day a daughter was born until the day she got married, it was blissful. The rest was melancholy. However, he clearly knew that her words were just a spur of the moment. He was just a passerby in her life. Sooner or later, there would be a man who would hold her hand. Chapter 175. Sooner or later, there would be a man who would hold her hand. And no matter how reluctant he would still have to entrust her hand to that man. But no matter what kind of man it was, as long as he bullied her and made her cry, even if it was her own wishful thinking, she couldn't let him know. Because she would forgive that man, but he wouldn't. However, Muyaja still felt warm inside when he heard her words. Why else would they say that a daughter was her father's lover in his previous life? It was so heartwarming. "Daddy, let's not go home tonight, okay?" Mu Yueyao was a little worried. After all, she reeked of alcohol. Although Mu Yaja was protecting her, if Yin Shirshir caught wind of it, she wouldn't be able to escape a scolding. She didn't want to make Yin Shirshir angry, because, no matter how protective Mu Yaja was of her, he was her father and also her husband. The only request he had for his daughter was to try her best not to make her mommy angry. Yin Shirshir was such a reasonable person that she wouldn't be unreasonable. If Yin Shirshir found out that she had gone to drink again, she would definitely be angry. Mu Yaja also guessed what she was thinking. What's the matter? Are you afraid that mommy will get angry when she smells the alcohol on you? I promised mommy that I wouldn't drink. Mu Yueyao sighed and sobered up a little. When she thought of Yin Shirshir's gloomy face, she actually started to feel a little scared. Mu Yaja flicked her head gently. Why did you still drink when you knew? Mu Yaja asked again. Have you thought it through? What? You've drunk and you've had enough trouble these few days. Have you thought it through? Mu Yueyao lifted her head and looked into Mu Yaja's eyes in a daze. Suddenly, she took a deep breath and her voice trembled a little. You haven't thought it through? I've thought it through. Mu Yueyao finally said seriously, I've decided to let him go. For some reason, looking at Yueyao's casual expression, Mu Yaja's heart ached even more. He understood that she had not let go at all. Her face was full of reluctance and heartache, but she had decided to let go. It was probably because she was disheartened and did not want to wait any longer. I know that there are some things that can no longer be undone, but I don't want him to trample on my pride anymore. Mu Yaja said indifferently. It's good that you've thought it through. Daddy, I really envy you and Mommy. Mu Yueyao sighed from the bottom of her heart. Your relationship with Mommy is really good. I rarely see the two of you fighting. When I was young, I thought that if there was a man who could dote on me like how Daddy dotes on Mommy, I would be willing to do anything for him. Impossible. Why? Mu Yueyao was a little puzzled and retorted. Daddy is not the only good man in this world. Mu Yaja smiled. But in this world, there is only one Daddy. While Yueyao was in a daze, Mu Yaja continued. In this world, there is only one Mommy. The relationship between your Mommy and I can't be replicated. Can't be replicated. It's the same for relationships. You can't use your request for Daddy to ask another man. Mu Yaja's words had a deeper meaning. Yueyao felt that his words were a little complicated and difficult to understand. Daddy, what do you mean? It's fine if you don't understand. Mu Yaja gently stroked her hair on her forehead. Go back to the room upstairs and sleep for the night. Come home with me tomorrow. Chapter 176. Yueyao was so tired that she was barely conscious. She leaned on Mu Yaja's shoulder and nodded to herself. It was obvious that she was exhausted. Mu Yaja carried her, his heart aching. He walked out of the door and headed upstairs. The 5th floor and above were all private rooms. Mu Yaja had specially prepared a princess suite for Yueyao. No one else was allowed to use this room under any circumstances. However, the room would be meticulously cleaned every 2 days to keep it clean and tidy. After Mu Yaja carried Yueyao into the room, she was already sleeping soundly in his arms. A certain man frowned in disdain. He despised the fact that his daughter reeked of alcohol, and it was inconvenient for him to help her wash up. It wasn't as if he couldn't get someone to serve her. However, seeing that she was sleeping so soundly, Mu Yaja couldn't bear to wake her up. Hence, he laid her flat on the bed and covered her with the blanket, allowing her to sleep soundly. The next day, when Yueyao woke up, it was already late in the morning. She opened her eyes and felt nauseous like a tidal wave. Yueyao kicked the blanket away weakly. Just as she turned over, she felt a tremor in her body as if something was tumbling violently. She opened her mouth and almost vomited on the carpet. However, a hand had already passed her the rubbish bin in time. After Yueyao finished vomiting, the foul smell from the rubbish bin made her almost unable to open her eyes. Are you done vomiting? A man's steady and powerful voice came from beside her. Yueyao woke up abruptly and turned her head in embarrassment. She saw Mu Yaja looking at her calmly. Daddy. Even though she had been vomiting like this for the past few days and had been drinking heavily, Mu Yaja suddenly felt embarrassed when he saw her vomiting in such a sorry state. Are you done vomiting? A little more. Muyaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He laughed and said, "Brew a little more?" As he spoke, he placed the rubbish bin at her door. He sat at the side and didn't say anything, just looking at her. Yueyao was embarrassed. She was disgusted by the smelly rubbish bin. She looked up. Muyaja thoughtfully handed her a glass of water. Yueyao took it obediently and gulped down a big mouthful. She rinsed her mouth and immediately vomited. Muyaja glanced at her and asked, "Are you better?" "Much better. Do you want to take a shower or go straight home?" Shower. She reeked of alcohol. She didn't notice it when she was drunk yesterday, but now that she was awake, she didn't feel well. "Go take a shower then. I'll wait for you outside." "Daddy." Yueyao was a little embarrassed and said, "You won't scold me, right?" Muyaja looked up at her. After a long while he said, "If you walk out of this room today and continue living like yesterday, Daddy doesn't recommend scolding you until you wake up." Yueyao shuddered violently. Yin Shishir had once told her that Muyaja was usually gentle to her, but when he got angry, he was 100 times scarier than her two brothers. Although she was spoiled and arrogant, she respected this father of hers very much. Of course, she had thought it through. She had been unable to recover from the setback for the past few days. Now that she had suffered and cried, she would look down on herself if she continued to give up on herself. It was just a man. Watch first Zue New Chapter 2 section. Please go to Hall Guest. Phone address. Chapter 177. Yueyao walked straight into the bathroom. Before this, Muyaja had already entered the bathroom and filled the bathtub with water. A rainbow-colored bath ball was placed beside it. Muyaja must have asked someone to prepare it. Yueyao was very touched. In the end, the one who doted on her was still her daddy. Yueyao put the bath ball into the bathtub. The small ball swayed in the water and then started to bubble. In the blink of an eye, it dragged a rainbow-colored tail, and the entire bathtub was filled with a fresh fragrance. After a short wait, she took off her clothes and lay in the bathtub. She closed her eyes in satisfaction. She loved bathing the most. When she was in the bathtub, she felt as if she had emptied her mind and would not think about anything else. But at this moment, she still thought about a lot of things. She thought about her own stupidity and foolishness. She thought about how she had been like a fool for so many years, chasing after the light but not being able to catch it. Yueyao took a deep breath of the mist and almost choked. Then she let go of her hands and relaxed her body in an instant. But her eyes were still a little sore. She had let it go. Besides relief, there was also an inexplicable pain. If it was so easy to let it go, there would not be so much pain. Let it go then. Yueyao cupped the water and gently covered her face. Let it go. Don't think about it anymore. With that, she immersed herself in the bathtub. "Young miss, I'll put your clothes here. They have been washed and ironed for you." The room service staff gently placed a pile of soft clothes on the stool. The clothes she wore yesterday already reeked of alcohol and could not be worn again. Hence, Muyaja asked the hotel manager to personally choose a new set of clothes. After washing and ironing them carefully, they were sent over. Yueyao wrapped herself in a bathrobe and held up the clothes. She asked doubtfully, "Where's Daddy?" "Chairman Mu is waiting for you at the clubhouse." "Okay, you can go out then. I'm going to change." "Yes. Young miss, if you need anything else, please feel free to let me know." "Got it." After everyone left, Yueyao casually changed into a new set of clothes. She was very particular about what she wore. However, in the past few days after returning from Hong Kong, she had been singing, drinking, and living a life of luxury. Even she herself felt that she was neither a human nor a ghost. However, just like Muyaja said, when she walked into the bathroom and came out, everything would be clear. He had figured everything out. After Yueyao changed her clothes, she came to the clubhouse and saw Muyaja sitting on the sofa. There were several bosses drinking coffee in the clubhouse. When they saw Muyaja, they immediately went up to greet him. Muyaja looked indifferent. These men were begging and pleading for nothing more than that. Now that more than half of the Xingyu Financial Group's affairs had been handed over to Yun Tianyu, he could not be bothered to interfere. Thus he leisurely played Tai Chi with them. When he saw Yueyao, he immediately asked, "Are you done?" "Yes." Yueyao came to Muyaja's side and said to him, "Daddy, let's go home." When they heard that they were going home, the two men looked at each other. No matter how anxious they were, there was nothing they could do. They could only nod repeatedly and watch the father and daughter leave. Chapter 178. 5 months later. The official handover of the CEO position of Tianyu Entertainment under Xingyu Financial Group was completed. Mu Yueyao became the only female CEO since the establishment of Xingyu Financial Group. She was in charge of all the entertainment businesses under Xingyu. Actually, this handover ceremony was considered to be particularly long. Although Yun Tianyu had taken over most of Xingyu's affairs from Mu Yaja, it did not mean that Xingyu Financial Group was a family-run enterprise. With the Mu Group as a precedent, Mu Yaja hoped that Xingyu Financial Group could become a multinational corporation that would last for generations. Therefore, all the positions in the corporation were fair competition. Of course, as the precious daughter of the founder of Xingyu Financial Group, she still had some preferential treatment in the election. After Yueyao officially took over Tianyu Entertainment, she made 3 sweeping changes. First, she eradicated all the vermin left behind in history. Tianyu Entertainment's predecessor was Huanyu Entertainment. After Xingyu Financial Group acquired the Mu Group, they also acquired Huanyu Entertainment. This was not a benign cooperation. Back then, Mu Yaja had forced the merger. Therefore, some of the senior shareholders of Huanyu Corporation were somewhat conflicted. The outside world was not optimistic about this acquisition. They had a feeling that after Huanyu was acquired by Xingyu, it would definitely go downhill. Indeed, during the period of time after the acquisition, Huanyu had indeed gone downhill for a long time. At that time, almost half of Jiangshan's business was supported by Yun Shishir. This acquisition almost caused Huanyu to suffer a great loss, and many popular celebrities left. After some time of consolidation, Huanyu Corporation was renamed Tianyu Entertainment. Only then did it pick up again. At that time, Yun Shishir, who was in a semi-retired state, was also the deputy director of the entertainment industry. She had a better strategic plan than Ji Lin. She did not sign any of the internet celebrities and instead, she specifically picked veteran actors and actresses whose contracts had ended. When Yueyao was 10 years old, Tianyu ushered in a historical year. That year, almost all the popular young actors and actresses failed at the box office due to high pay and zero acting skills. On the contrary, a TV series that Yun Shishir invested in was so popular that it surprised the outside world. She wasn't investing in some big IP or celebrity production. It was just a simple family drama. It was nothing more than a family affair between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. However, because of the strong sense of immersion, her own ability in the drama was regarded as a masterpiece by the audience to wash their eyes. Actually, the story wasn't that fresh. It was just that after such a long period of time, after the awkward acting of those young actors and actresses, the word traffic suddenly lost its luster. Coupled with the rectification of some of the bad practices in the entertainment industry regarding high pay and loopholes in contracts, many stars with good acting skills finally made a comeback. This was not because Yun Shishir had a better view of the big picture, but because she believed that a celebrity could be inexperienced in acting and not have the looks of a dragon or a phoenix among men, but if there was a problem with their attitude or if their integrity was questionable, they were destined to not be able to stay young. She didn't like people who were not serious about their work. The reputation of the artists under Tianyu suddenly rose. After that, Tianyu recruited a large group of elite editors. With good stories, a good team, good actors, and good resources, Tianyu almost occupied a heaven-defying market share. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 179. However, even with such heaven-defying resources, there were still some people who did not agree with each other. Because of the historical problems left over from the period of Huanyu and some vermin in the company, during the handover period, Mu Yueyao got rid of all these people in one fell swoop. This method won her the favor of everyone in the company. After all, there were some people that the previous dynasty couldn't touch. However, Mu Yueyao was different. As a new official, she had power and courage. Originally, Yun Shishir didn't want Mu Yueyao to handle the Vanity Fair. The Mu family was rich. To put it bluntly, even if Mu Yueyao stayed at home, she could still sit on the wealth that she couldn't spend for centuries. Her two elder brothers were influential figures, and their parents had accumulated wealth that could rival a country. Yin Shishir's idea was for Yueyao to be able to do what she liked. However, she didn't know what her daughter had experienced. Overnight, she became less lively and talkative than before. At the same time, she strongly requested to inherit Tianyu Entertainment. Although Yin Shishir didn't agree, Mu Yaja let her have her way. Although Yin Shishir didn't understand, she believed in one thing when it came to educating children. That was, it was good enough for one of the husband and wife to make the decision. Since Mu Yaja had already decided, she had no objection. However, not long after she took office, Yueyao did something earth-shattering in the industry. Everyone was shocked. That was she banned Jingyang from the company. Half of Jingyang's contracts were with Tianyu. Moreover, it was the most important part. Apart from commercial endorsements and variety shows, Tianyu had full authority in film and television. In other words, if Mu Yueyao wanted to ban Jingyang, she could simply open her mouth and close it. However, Jingyang was facing a variety show and had nowhere else to go. This was only known to the company's insiders. No one outside knew. Soon Jingyang's studio caught wind of the news. Overnight, all the discussions were terminated. Although there was freedom in variety shows, because of Mu Yueyao's ban, everyone panicked and didn't know if they should continue to invite Jingyang to work with them. Almost everyone was surprised. In everyone's eyes, Mu Yueyao's care and admiration for Jingyang was unparalleled. What exactly had happened that made her so heartless as to ban Jingyang? Jingyang was not surprised when he found out. He knew that Yueyao would do this. She must hate him. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so cruel to take such a measure. Everyone in the studio panicked. Apart from Jingyang, no one was calm. The manager knew about the relationship between Mu Yueyao and Jingyang. He also knew that something must have happened between the two of them. Seeing Jingyang's indifferent expression, he couldn't help but become anxious. Jingyang, say something. Why are you acting like nothing happened? Why did they ban you all of a sudden? There must be some kind of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Jingyang smiled helplessly. Since she hates me so much, let her hate me. I owe her this. His manager asked tentatively. Why don't you go and see her? What's going on? No matter what, you have to find out. No need, Jingyang said and didn't want to say anything else. Watch first episode Zue new episode chapter 2 section please go to Hall of Visitors, mobile address. Chapter 180. The door suddenly opened. A middle-aged man in a suit walked in. Even though he looked a little old, he still looked extremely handsome. His demeanor hadn't changed. He still looked as elegant as ever. When he walked in, everyone was silent. No one dared to speak. Jingyang still looked indifferent. When he saw the man, he looked up and said indifferently, Mr. Qin. Qin Yongke was the boss of Jingyang's studio. He was in charge of all the affairs of Jingyang's Asia-Pacific division. Qin Yongke glanced at him. Even though Jingyang looked like nothing had happened, it was impossible not to see the dispirited look in his eyes. He pretended not to see it and sat down opposite him. Pretending as if nothing had happened, he asked, What's going on? Nothing. Nothing. Qin Yongke sneered. Nothing? Did she help you ban you? The whole industry is saying that you offended the princess of the imperial family. She wants you to be kicked out. Jingyang remained silent. Qin Yongke looked around. The people around him immediately understood and left. When only he and Jingyang were left in the room, Qin Yongke stood up and paced back and forth a few times. Finally, he said, Jingyang, it seems like you haven't understood the seriousness of the matter. Now you're going to be banned. This is such a big matter. Instead of resolving it, you're sitting here with such a face. What are you doing? What's the meaning of this? Jingyang was still expressionless. She's the one who wants to ban me. I didn't beg her to ban me. Am I supposed to suck up to her and beg her to let me off and be merciful? Qin Yongke did not speak. After a long while he smiled coldly. Others may not know the relationship between you and the Mu family's daughter, but I know it very well. You should know better than me what's going on, right? Jingyang looked away. You're running away, Qin Yongke said mercilessly. Hurry up and go over. Whether you beg for mercy or be shameless, You have to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can say that you're wasting all our energy and time. When Jin Young heard that Chen Yonka wanted him to look for Yue Yao, his face darkened. Why? Of course you have to deal with your own problems. Don't tell me you want us to clean up after you? Jin Young smiled. If she wants to ban me, it's just a matter of words. I can't do anything about it. You have a way. I didn't. Even if you don't have a solution, think of one for me. Jin Young remained silent. Chen Yonka couldn't bear to see him like this. He suddenly walked over, stretched out his hand, and grabbed his collar. Now think of a way. President Chen, don't force me. You think I want to? Chen Yonka said angrily. You know, when you set up your personal studio, I invested 20 million. And this is just the initial funds. Later on, I invested tens of millions, and this studio signed a contract worth hundreds of millions. Just because of your personal matter, all our hard work is going to go down the drain. Jin Yang, don't be too self-righteous and selfish. Chen Yonka roared, and Jin Yang was like a mute, unable to speak. I don't care how difficult it is for you. You must settle this matter for me. Do you understand? Chen Yonka let go of him and continued, You're not enemies. Why do you have to do this? Chapter 181. Jin Yang just stared at the cup on the coffee table and did not say a word. Chen Yonka knew that he was being very aggressive, but he knew what he was doing. Jin Yang was his artist, and he knew his character very well. They had worked together for so many years and Jin Yang had made a lot of money for him. He would not make things difficult for him over such a small amount of money. He just couldn't stand it. They were not enemies. Especially after he came back from Hong Kong, he was always holding a ring in a daze. On the surface he looked calm, but Chen Yonka knew that he must have been hurt badly. Jin Yang, are you suffering from self-abuse? Chen Yonka squatted down and looked at him seriously. But inadvertently, he noticed that the corners of his eyes were bloodshot. When he saw it, his heart ached and he was angry that he did not fight back. But he did not say anything. He felt that he had made it clear enough. You can either talk to her or just quit the entertainment industry. Don't waste everyone's time. Jin Yang said gloomily, Don't worry, I will take care of it. Chen Yonka was stunned and suddenly snorted. This is your business. You have to be responsible for yourself. Put everything else aside. At the Moon Palace, Jin Yang held the business card. On it was the contact number of Tianyu Entertainment's public relations director, Han Guoyu. He also found out that Mu Yueyao was entertaining at the Moon Palace through him. He did not know why he was in a daze. In his heart, Mu Yueyao had always been a princess-like existence. She lived a good life and the word entertaining should be very distant to her. When he found out that she had taken over Tianyu Entertainment, he was a little surprised. But on second thought, as the CEO of Tianyu Entertainment, it was inevitable that she would have to entertain people. Jin Yang walked into the club and stated his purpose of visit. The manager looked very cold. President Mu is busy. It is not convenient for him to introduce you. Jin Yang turned around and wanted to leave, but he suddenly recalled Chen Yonka's words. He braced himself and turned around again. I have something important to discuss with her and I need to see her now. She won't see you. Jin Yang did not think much of it. You haven't told her. How do you know that she doesn't want to see me? The manager was speechless. He pinched his earpiece and walked to the side to report. Not long after, he walked over and looked Jin Yang up and down. He said coldly, Come with me. Jin Yang followed the manager to the door of the private room. As soon as he pushed the door open, the originally quiet corridor reverberated with the music from the private room. The manager first went in to ask for instructions, and then Jin Yang went in. Just as he walked in, he saw Mu Yueyao surrounded by several handsome men. On a small stage, a popular idol group was holding a microphone and singing a pop song. Jin Yang's sudden intrusion surprised everyone. The news of Jin Yang being blacklisted hadn't spread that far and wide. Other than the senior management, the artists under him hadn't heard much about it. Jin Yang was a popular idol. Compared to him, the idols in the room were considered juniors. Wow, it's Jin Yang. This is the first time I've seen him in person. God, so handsome. A few young men who had obviously just debuted looked at Jin Yang, and whispered to each other. The most embarrassing thing was that one of the young men's eyes looked like knives that were aimed at Jing Yang. Chapter 182. Jing Yang was a little annoyed. He was not annoyed because the boy had the same eyes as him, but because his hand was wrapped around Mu Yueyao's shoulder. Mu Yueyao was holding a wine glass full of red wine. When she saw Jing Yang walk in, she instinctively wanted to put it down, because he did not like her drinking. However, halfway through, she suddenly thought of something. Her face turned ashen, and she slammed the wine glass on the table. The wine glass cracked slightly and some of the red wine spilled out. The boy beside her was shocked. When he saw that her hand was covered in red wine, he immediately took out his handkerchief and carefully wiped her hand. My Xiaobao, why are you so careless? If the glass breaks and you hurt your hand, my heart will ache. This was undoubtedly a provocation in Jing Yang's eyes. Let go of her, he instinctively shouted. The sudden order startled everyone. The boy turned his head and looked at Jing Yang, not knowing what to do. Jing Yang did not have much patience. He walked over and grabbed Yueyao's hand, slapping the boy's hand away at the same time. Because of Jing Yang's status, the boy did not dare to say anything. Mu Yueyao struggled to break free. It was obvious that she was repulsed. What are you doing here? She asked indifferently. She glanced at him from the corner of her eye and then looked away. Yueyao, don't mess around. Mu Yueyao sneered. Jing Yang, according to the rules, please call me President Mu. President Mu? Realizing that her tone was so distant, Jing Yang was stunned for a moment. Then he said, don't mess around. You haven't answered me. Mu Yueyao's tone was as cold as ever. What are you doing here? There are many people here. Can we talk in private? Everyone here is my people. There's no need to avoid. After a pause, Mu Yueyao asked without hesitation. You're just here to verify whether the decision to ban you came from me. Jing Yang remained silent. Mu Yueyao took a deep breath. So it was really because of this. Although she had expected it, she still felt very disappointed. If it were not for this, he would never have taken the initiative to appear in front of her. Mu Yueyao said calmly, I was the one who made the decision to ban you. You don't have to be surprised about this, and you have no right to object. Please think about this carefully, Jing Yang said. I know that you have a lot of dissatisfaction with me, but there is no need to vent your anger on others. I don't care if you want to ban me, but the studio under my name is affected. I can't sit back and do nothing. So, Mu Yueyao shrugged. Even if you're dissatisfied, it doesn't affect my decision. What do you want? Jing Yang was a little angry. You don't have to target me from this angle. Jing Yang, don't be so arrogant. Look at all the people in this room. Her looks weren't bad, and she was good at singing and dancing. Her acting skills weren't bad either. If she was nurtured properly, it was only a matter of time before she became a superstar of the new generation. Why can't I give them a chance? Mu Yueyao continued. More importantly, they are all loyal to me. They won't make me unhappy or angry. Why should I support you and look at your face? Am I asking for trouble? Every word was like a gem. Jing Yang looked at her silently. He didn't know why, but his heart palpitated. Watch first episode Zue New Chapter section. Please go to Hall of Visitors, mobile address. Chapter 183. Jing Yang looked at her silently. He didn't know why, but his heart was palpitating. Mu Yueyao looked at him silently. She didn't know why, but she thought she had completely let go of him, that she had given up on him. But when Jing Yang appeared in front of her again, her heart was fiercely shaken. The longing that had festered long ago overflowed in her heart. Mu Yueyao turned away and didn't look at him anymore. Jing Yang said quietly, Are you hoping that I'll be like them and please you? Mu Yueyao was stunned. She didn't think that way at all. However, just as she was about to deny it, she felt that if she denied it, it would make him feel that she was bowing down to him. She had been so humble for so many years, but even so, she couldn't wait for him to turn back. Then, she would take what he said as the truth. Would he please her? So what if he pleases her? Mu Yueyao sneered and asked calmly, Can you? Jing Yang's expression was still cold and didn't change at all. Mu Yueyao raised her eyes and glanced at him without leaving a trace, but her tone was even colder. Are you willing to please me? You're the nation's idol. You've always been high and mighty. Pleasing me is equivalent to lowering yourself. Would he? Lowering myself? To him, this word was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Whose dignity? Whose nobility? Whose dignity? In front of her, what dignity and dignity did he have? Jin Yang silently sucked in a breath of cold air. Finally he slowly exhaled. Suddenly he strolled in front of her. He was too tall. Mu Yueyao could still remember that he was only half a head taller than her. In fact, when they were in middle school, she had developed faster than him, and was about the same height as him. In the blink of an eye, he had grown into a 1.82-meter tall young man. Standing in front of her, he felt a sense of oppression. Mu Yueyao suddenly felt suffocated. What made her feel even more suffocated was that in the next second, he suddenly bent over and lowered his head. He reached out and gently pinched her chin, his handsome face slowly pressing down on hers. Do you like me like this? Jing Yang's breath smelled like orchids. His usual cold and indifferent tone actually sounded like he was pampering her. The tenderness that she had not felt in a long time caused her to be deeply immersed in it, and she could not regain her senses. She was surprised and doubtful. But Jing Yang didn't wait for her to question him. He lowered his gaze and sealed her voice before she could say anything. The surroundings suddenly became deathly silent, and not a single sound was made. Everyone's eyes widened fiercely as they stared at the two of them. Yueyao stepped back slightly. Jing Yang's hand suddenly hugged the back of her neck tightly. Yueyao couldn't step back anymore, and let his lips crush hers. His scalding hot breath was like magma, passing through the gap between her lips and gushing into her mouth and teeth. She could even smell the scent of the mint candy he was most used to eating. It was fresh and fragrant, and she couldn't help but indulge in it. Yueyao felt as if her entire body had sunk into a swamp. She wanted to struggle, but she couldn't move. After a while, Mu Yueyao reached out and wanted to push him away. However, Jing Yang had already expected it and hugged her even tighter. The two of them were so close to each other. Mu Yueyao had never thought that it would be such a scene. Watch first Zue new chapter section. Please go to hall guest, phone address. Chapter 184. Even though the two of them were so close to each other. However, there was still a trace of embarrassment in Mu Yueyao's eyes. Earlier, she could clearly feel the warmth in his eyes, but now, it was only coldness. A sense of helplessness enveloped her. Mu Yueyao asked impassively, "What do you want? Is this enough for you?" Jing Yang gently stroked her chin and narrowed his eyes. "Is this the kind of submission you want?" Submission? When Mu Yueyao heard this, she felt as if a basin of cold water had drenched her from head to toe. She looked up in disbelief and stared at Jing Yang, repeatedly thinking about what he had just said. Did he think that she wanted him to submit to her? Mu Yueyao's heart was really cold. Her lips parted into a cruel smile, and a voice that didn't seem to belong to her escaped from her lips. "Are you here to persuade me to give up the ban on you?" Jing Yang remained silent, taking it as a tacit admission. Mu Yueyao arrogantly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Suppressing the disappointment in her heart, she said coldly, "That will depend on your performance." Because of her overly strange tone, Jing Yang's expression immediately froze. Then he smiled faintly and said, "I will definitely satisfy you, Chairman Mu." Chairman Mu, he actually used such an unfamiliar form of address. Mu Yueyao smiled even more bleakly. "Don't disappoint me." Jing Yang lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Tonight, Tonight? What did he mean?" Mu Yueyao didn't have time to think before he kissed her again. All her thoughts froze at this moment. In the hotel corridor, there were messy footsteps. Mu Yueyao felt extremely drunk. However, in her memory he didn't feel like he had drunk much. How could he be so drunk all of a sudden? She staggered as she walked, her hand held tightly by Jing Yang. This was a hotel. What would happen next was completely predictable. Jing Yang said that he would perform well tonight. She wasn't stupid. He had been so attentive. Moreover, he had held her hand and led her into the hotel. It was self-evident what this meant. Yueyao Mu had already experienced puberty. She had once held her blushing face and wondered if she and Jing Yang would be like daddy and mommy if they got married. She was young and insensible. In the middle of the night, she saw her daddy carrying her mommy into the room. Out of curiosity, she sneaked to Muyaja and Yin Shirshi's door and listened to the movements in the room through the door. Muyaja had put in a lot of effort in soundproofing the room. Through the door, nothing could be heard. However, Yueyao already had a vague idea of what was going on. What exactly happened between a man and a woman? Perhaps it was because her imagination was limited. No matter how good her imagination was, the other party only had Jing Yang's face. At that time, she might have already realized that she didn't simply see Jing Yang as an older brother. She regarded him as the object of her affection, and was filled with youthful joy. In the room, the door was pushed open. Jing Yang held her arm and pulled her into the room. At that moment, Mu Yueyao suddenly felt as if her soul had been sucked out of her. She entered the dark room. Before she could sort out her messy thoughts, the door was already closed. The room was so dark that she couldn't even see her fingers. She suddenly panicked. Chapter 185. She started to panic all of a sudden. Jing Yang pinched her chin and lowered his head, taking away all of her breaths. In the dark night, she felt as if her body was drowning in the sea as the seawater gushed into her body. Suffocation. The pain was accompanied by the waves and slowly engulfed her body. The next day, the sun shone on the edge of the bed. When Mu Yueyao opened her eyes, she was the only one left on the huge bed. She sat up on the bed in a daze and looked around. The messy clothes on the floor, the crumpled bedsheets and her throbbing temples reminded her of the madness that had happened last night. Jing! She was about to call his name when she heard a sudden movement in the bathroom. Mu Yueyao nervously covered herself with the blanket. After a while, she saw Jing Yang walking out of the bathroom with a bathrobe draped over him. Jing Yang had a golden ratio figure and exquisite facial features. Even though he was only wearing a simple bathrobe, it did not detract from his heroic demeanor. He was able to become such a popular celebrity not only because of his superb acting and singing skills, but also because of his face. Mu Yueyao wrapped herself up like a dumpling and was extremely embarrassed. She wanted to break the silence, but she did not know what to say. Are you satisfied? Jing Yang was the first to break the silence. Mu Yueyao did not know what he wanted to ask. Last night, Jing Yang sat on the edge of the bed with a calm expression. The gentleness in his eyes was unprecedented. Are you satisfied with my service? Mu Yueyao's face turned pale at once. She felt that every word he said seemed to be humiliating her. Yes, she wanted to have him. But it wasn't in this sense. Mu Yueyao turned her face away and did not look at him. Jing Yang took a deep look at her and raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh, looks like you're not satisfied. It's okay. Jing Yang slowly inched closer to her and grabbed her chin. I have all the time in the world now, he said softly. Jing Yang, Yueyao finally couldn't take it anymore. Don't go overboard. However, Jing Yang ignored her warning. His hands entwined with hers, trapping her in this world and kissing her lips. His kiss seemed to have a magical power. When she touched his lips just now, it was as if she had been poisoned, and she could no longer move. Mu Yueyao struggled with her last bit of rationality. Jing Yang, don't do this. Don't you like it? Jing Yang leaned over. Mu residence. Mu Yueyao did not return home for the entire night. Mu Yaja's expression remained the same. The manager of the clubhouse called and reported Mu Yueyao's whereabouts. The manager said that Mu Yueyao had been with Jing Yang and had not left the clubhouse. Mu Yaja was relieved. Yin Shirsher was still worried when she heard that. These two fellows seem to have some conflict recently. Is it really not a big deal? Mu Yaja said disapprovingly. Let the youngsters solve their own problems. Why are you getting involved? Yin Shirsher pouted. I'm a youngster too, okay? Could it be that in your eyes, I'm already an old woman? Mu Yaja grunted. You're an old woman. What about you? Then aren't you a stinky old man? What's there to dislike about an old man if I'm an old woman? You. As the two of them bickered, Yin Shirsher forgot that Yueyao had not returned home for the entire night. Quick, praise your wife for being beautiful. Chapter 186. Daddy. Xiaoyi Chen suddenly rubbed his chest and frowned deeply. My chest feels a little stuffy. What's wrong? A hint of worry appeared on his face. Why is your chest feeling stuffy again? Xiaoyi Chen bit his head in confusion and pouted. I don't know. It's just stuffy and sour. I feel so sad. Muyaja patted his little head. At that moment, there was a sudden commotion at the entrance. Oh my God! So beautiful! The end of the red carpet was once again crowded with enthusiastic reporters. Yun Shirshir had an elegant and charming smile on her face as she held on to Gu Xingzi's arm and gracefully entered the venue. When they appeared in front of the camera just now, there were countless stunned, jealous, contemptuous, and questioning eyes that fell on them from all directions. Especially when they saw Yun Shirshir's eye-catching luxurious gown and the dazzling ruby necklace on her collarbone. Yun Shirshir was dressed in a luxurious red gown and was as beautiful as a fresh and tender red rose. Her delicate face was full of color and fragrance. When she stood next to Gu Xingzi, they had to admit that they were a perfect match. Gu Xingzi had always been the darling of the fashion industry. With his tall figure and charming face, no matter which female celebrity stood next to him, they seemed to be overshadowed and robbed of some of their elegance. However, Yun Shirshir was different. When she stood next to him, not only was she not overshadowed by his elegance, she stood out even more. This caused the reporters to excitedly whisper to each other. I recognize her. Isn't she the newcomer who came in with Heavenly King Gu? Yes. Her name is Yun Shirshir. I heard her name just now. I heard that she's a very talented newcomer with great acting skills. I heard that she's the female lead chosen by Director Lin. You know Director Lin's standards. TSK, he's very strict. To be able to gain Director Lin's approval, his background must be extraordinary. Amazement and praise rushed towards them like a surging wave. Yun Shirshir was a little scared, but she still had a charming smile on her face. She cooperated with the media's request to stop and hold hands with Gu Xingzi, accepting the baptism of the spotlight. Mu Wanru immediately caught sight of the brilliant blood-red streak on Yun Shirshir's neck. She widened her eyes in surprise and clenched her fists in disbelief. Then her suspicious gaze slowly turned to Muyaja. There was no way she would mistake that ruby necklace. It was Muyaja's personal keepsake, and the only precious relic his mother had left him. In the past, when she saw this necklace, he had always kept it in a small and exquisite crystal box. He always carried it with him and never left it. Even she couldn't touch it. Not to mention the others. This necklace was priceless. Its value was immeasurable. He actually gave it to Yun Shirshir? It must be fake. That necklace must be fake, right? It must be fake, right? Otherwise, how could it be? Mu Wanru's face turned even paler. If the occasion permitted, she really wanted to rush over and turn Yun Shirshir into ashes. The entire banquet had not officially started, but the atmosphere was already at the highest level because of Gu Xingzi and Yun Shirshir. In the magnificent hall, the lights were intertwined. Yun Shirshir did not notice Mu Wanru's hateful gaze. Chapter 187. Who knew how many of them she was going to kill tonight? Even Li Hanlin, who was watching the scene from the second floor, was stunned. Yun Tianyu stepped on his foot and said coldly, "Agent Li, have you forgotten what I told you?" No. Li Hanlin reacted at once. Perhaps he was too shocked. He was so agitated that he almost dropped his expensive SLR camera on the floor. He broke out in a cold sweat. Calm down. Yu looked at him speechlessly, as if mocking him for being inexperienced. Director Yin, oh my God. Madam Yun is so beautiful that time seems to have stopped. Li Hanlin was deeply shocked by this beauty. He quickly raised his camera and still did not forget to exclaim. The creator is so amazing, so beautiful. So beautiful. Of course. My mommy is a fairy who has descended to earth. Yu smiled knowingly as he looked at his mommy affectionately. His eyes were filled with tenderness and warmth. Sister Jingtian, isn't that Yun Shirshir? Oh my God. She's so beautiful in her gown. Tang Yu, who was at the VIP table, exclaimed when she saw Yun Shirshir. She nudged Lu Jingtian, who was toasting with others, in disbelief. The latter turned around unhappily and coldly said, "What's with the noise? Are you inexperienced? Seriously? Do you still remember her? She's the newbie that Director Lin has been grooming recently. The necklace on her neck is so beautiful. It's actually a pigeon's blood ruby." Lu Jingtian's heart skipped a beat. She followed Tang Yu's line of sight and was shocked, too. That necklace looks so familiar. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before, and had a deep impression of it. Suddenly, a white light flashed in her mind. Ah. This isn't. Lu Jingtian's eyes flashed with surprise, and then a fire of jealousy ignited in her. That necklace was a one-of-a-kind item in the world. She had only seen it on Brother Mu's wrist before. She heard that this necklace meant a lot to him and was regarded as his life. She was very fond of this necklace at first, so she begged him to let her have it. However, she accidentally angered him. At this point, she no longer dared to covet this necklace too much. It was rumored that this tear of rose was the last work of Jean Toomerson, the top Italian jewelry designer of the last century. After that, many jewelry designers used it as a source of inspiration to design many exquisite diamond necklaces. However, pigeon blood rubies were rare in the world. This rose's tear could be said to be the queen of gems at the end of the last century. Why was it on her? The suspicion in Lu Jingtian's eyes deepened, but what was more hidden in them was undisguised jealousy and hatred. She was going to steal all the limelight at tonight's cocktail party. This Yin Shishir had stolen her role and her limelight. Lu Jingtian's gaze fell on Gu Xingzi in disbelief. She was Gu Xingzi's female companion? Lu Jingtian had previously invited Gu Xingzi to be her male companion tonight, but she was mercilessly rejected by the latter, saying that he already had a date. She had been disappointed and thought that she was an international superstar invited by Huanyu Entertainment. It was actually her? A newcomer who had yet to debut? What was this? Lu Jingtian's heart was in turmoil. Chapter 188. When Yin Shishir walked past her, she secretly stuck out the tip of her foot from under her dress. Perhaps her gaze was too sharp, so it attracted Yin Shishir's attention. She had learned from her mistakes. Earlier, when she saw Yangmi making things difficult for Yin Na, she was very mindful of her feet. The gala was a solemn occasion. Gu Xingzi did not hesitate to use his popularity to promote her. Knowing how to cherish opportunities, she maintained the highest standards, be it her bearing or elegant expression. Yin Shishir saw the hostility in her eyes and warily glanced at her feet. She quickly sensed that something was amiss. However, she pretended not to see it and nonchalantly held Gu Xingzi's arm as they brushed past each other. Under her feet, a pair of slender 7-centimeter heels ruthlessly crushed the back of Lu Jingtian's feet. Ah! Before Lu Jingtian could see Yin Shishir's embarrassing moment, she cried out in pain from her toes. Her forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. Yin Shishir's heels were very exquisite, especially the pair of long and slender heels. Coincidentally, Lu Jingtian had worn a pair of fishmouth heels to match her gown today. Yin Shishir purposely aimed her foot at her exposed big toe. If she stomped on it with all her might, it would only be a small crack on her fingernail. But she was afraid that she would break her bone. The pain of having her bones broken was heart-wrenching. With this stomp, Lu Jingtian fell to the ground. Today, she had chosen a short gown, but for some reason, she did not wear any underwear. Not only did she tumble, but she also exposed her underwear in front of everyone. The sharp-eyed media quickly snapped a few high-definition photos of her, making her look awkward. She cried out in pain without caring about her image. She was in so much pain that she was drenched in sweat. She felt suffocated as her breathing quickened and tears flowed uncontrollably. Yin Shishir. Tang Yu, who saw this scene, was the first to jump out. She pointed at Yin Shishir and said fiercely, "Did you do this on purpose?" Yin Shishir too was stunned by this sudden accident. She covered her mouth helplessly, and was momentarily at a loss of what to do. She was so frightened that she kept quiet. This accident caused quite a commotion. Gu Xingzi shielded Yin Shishir behind him and glared at Tang Yu warningly. "What do you mean by this?" His eyes were unusually cold. For a moment, it was as if the temperature around them had dropped to the freezing point. Tang Yu was intimidated by his gaze. She restrained her fierce tone, but she was still indignant. This newbie doesn't know her place. How dare she step on Miss Lu's feet? Miss Lu was an honorific in Huanyu's name. For A-list celebrities like Yang Mi and Han Yuyan, it wasn't a big deal to call them by their names. However, a third-rate celebrity like Tang Yu could only respectfully address her as Miss Lu. Gu Xingzi said expressionlessly. Shishir stepped on Jingtian's feet? Did you see it? Tang Yu mumbled, "No." Yang Mi and Han Yiyan stood at a distance, not intending to step forward. Now that Chairman Mu and young Madam Mu were present, it was better to protect themselves and not get involved in this mess. Chapter 189. She used so much force. Brother Xingze, I feel like my toes are going to break. Lu Jingtian lamented pitifully. I didn't. Yun Shishir tried to explain herself in a fluster, but she looked helpless as if she had no way to defend herself. Inside, however, she thought to herself, my toes are definitely fractured. I know very well how hard she used. Even though I've always been compromising, it's all for Yu's sake. I'm not a pushover. I won't reject anyone who wants to bully me. She could vaguely tell that Lu Jingtian was not someone to be trifled with, but who asked her to be the one to trip her up first. She was merely giving her a taste of her own medicine, so it was not overboard. She could offend anyone she wanted. She had offended so many people today, and she was not one of them. Gu Xingze knitted his brows. He had a close relationship with Lu Jingtian, but she was used to acting coquettishly, so her words were often exaggerated. Gu Xingze naturally did not believe her easily, so he only said, I'll get someone to send you to the infirmary right away. Brother Xingze, why are you so biased toward her? That little B***tch clearly stepped on me on purpose. Mu Yaja looked in Yun Shishir's direction with a deep frown. He was already very displeased from the moment she entered the venue. He originally thought that this woman was tactful enough, but he did not expect her to appear together with Gu Xingze. At this moment, Xiaoyichen, who was standing beside him, also had a gloomy look on his face. The spot where Lu Jingtian fell was not far from where he was standing. From the moment Yun Shishir entered the venue, Xiaoyichen's entire attention was on him. The only thing the father and son had in common was that Xiaoyichen was equally unhappy with such a beautiful sister holding another man's arm. What happened next, though, was inconceivable to him despite his young age. Lu Jingtian actually stretched out her leg to trip him. He saw it clearly, but it was too late for him to stop her. He did not expect things to develop in an unexpected direction, though naturally, the people on the second floor could clearly see the chaos that had occurred. Yun Tianyu only heard Lu Jingtian's unreasonable crying and accusations. It was clear that she wanted to put Yun Shishir in a disadvantageous position. His face turned red with anger. How dare you bully my mommy? Agent Li, what is this woman's name? Agent Li said bitterly, I don't know. Yu. Didn't you do your homework before coming here? The female celebrities I like aren't from Huanyu, Li Hanlin said innocently with a pitiful look on his face. But President Yun, I will investigate this matter thoroughly after the party ends. Yun Tianyu leaned on the railing and looked around for a while before anxiously saying, No, I want to go down. Li Hanlin, on the other hand, quickly picked him up. Director Yun, stop messing around. You can't go now. Your identity cannot be exposed for the time being. No, this pretty sister didn't step on you. Just as Yun Tianyu was worrying, a tender voice came from downstairs. With a dark face, he looked in the direction of the voice and saw Xiaoyichen unhappily saying, This pretty sister was walking fine, but you stretched out your leg to trip her. It's your fault. Yun Tianyu's face darkened when he heard this. Pretty sister? This little brat actually called his biological mommy pretty sister? Yun Tianyu, who had always been calm and collected, twitched his mouth violently and became flustered in the wind. Chapter 190. This little brat actually called his biological mommy pretty sister? Yun Tianyu, who had always been calm and collected, twitched his mouth violently and became flustered in the wind. Then, based on this logic, what should this little lad call him? In his mind he could not help but picture little Yichen standing in front of him, bashful and childish as he called out to him, Uncle. Yun Tianyu felt as if he had been struck by a landmine. Why was his brother so stupid? He really despised him. Compared to Xiaoyichen, he despised Mu Yaja even more. They had the same genes, so why was his brother's IQ worrying? In a way, Yun Tianyu could be said to be the high IQ pillar of the family of four, holding up the average IQ. His thoughts paused for a moment, and he harshly reprimanded himself for letting his imagination run wild. What family of four? He did not acknowledge his father and brother. His family only had his mommy and him. The rest did not count. Lu Jingtian was caught off guard by Xiao Chen's words. Her face darkened and she was embarrassed. She even forgot to cry and could only laugh awkwardly. Deep down, she hated this child, who had appeared out of nowhere to the core. If it were any other child, she would have long flared up. Alas, the one standing before her was Mu Yichen, the young master of the Mu group. Standing behind him was her beloved, Mu Yaja. No matter what, she had to be gentler to this child. The Mu family's love for this child was self-evident. What if she had to get along with him after marrying into the Mu family? She had to make this child like her, lest he become an obstacle to her marrying into the Mu family. She could only bear with the pain and smilingly said, "Baby Xiao Yichen, you must have seen wrongly. How could I do such a despicable thing?" Xiao Yichen looked at her with disdain and complained in his childish voice. "Daddy taught me since I was young that a man should be upright and take responsibility for his words. I'm not lying. It's clearly you who stretched out your leg to trip this pretty sister." Yin Tianyu almost fell to the ground. This child looked cold on the surface, but when he spoke, it was as if he was in kindergarten. He thought that he had also inherited excellent genes, and was as smart as him. He covered his face silently. Li Hanlin nodded. "That's right. That's more like a 6-year-old kid. President Yun, your IQ and EQ are already heaven-defying." Xiao Yichen's words stirred up a commotion among the guests. Children's words are never fake. Moreover, for a prestigious family like the Mu group, their upbringing must be very strict. Young Master Mu would never lie. "That's right. I also think that Lu Jingtian is targeting Yin Shishir. It's inevitable for women to be jealous. Yin Shishir is so glamorous tonight. She must have stolen the limelight from many people. Some people have been unhappy for a long time. They must want to see her embarrassed. Newcomers are always oppressed, especially newcomers like Yin Shishir who haven't debuted yet. It's natural for her to be ostracized. I really feel sorry for her." Lu Jingtian was on the verge of tears. "I didn't." Chapter 191. Xiao Yichen suddenly pointed at the camera at the side. "I see that this camera is facing you. Play the video back, and the truth will be revealed." With that, the little lad mysteriously pointed at Lu Jingtian, and pretended to be cool. "There is only one truth." After saying this, he actually raised his chin in self-satisfaction, thinking that he had said something cool. Everyone fell silent. Even Yin Shishir was stunned by Xiao Yichen's amusing act. Mu Yaja could no longer maintain his calm composure, and his lips curled into a smile for some reason. Upstairs, Yin Tianyu was completely petrified. "Is he joking?" Gu Xingzi let out a pft, as he was amused by Xiao Yichen's amusing look. "Ha ha ha." The guests were also tickled by the little guy's adorable side. Yin Shishir, who was standing among the crowd, looked at Xiao Yichen. She wanted to laugh, but she could not bring herself to do so. This child was actually helping her? This was something she did not expect. Ever since this child was born, the mother and son had never seen each other. However, there seemed to be a faint bond between them. After all, blood was thicker than water. It was a bond that could not be erased. Could this be considered telepathy? What did this child call her just now? Pretty sister? Yin Shishir could not help chuckling. When she first saw this child, he had an arrogant and cold expression, which was exactly the same as Mu Yaja's impression of him. He seemed unapproachable, but she did not expect him to have such an adorable side. Even though he and Yu were identical twins, their personalities were very different. Yu was a very gentle child. He was innocent, romantic, adorable, and heartwarming. Occasionally, he would show an astonishing maturity that made people want to rely on him. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, seemed to have inherited more of Mu Yaja's genes. On the surface, he looked deep and cold, but he could also reveal a rare adorable side. In life, he must be a very clever child, right? She had missed 6 years of his life, which was one of her biggest regrets. For a moment, the awkward atmosphere was diluted. Gu Xingzi smiled as he secretly signaled his assistant with a look. The assistant beside him immediately understood and hurried forward to help the woman up, intending to take her to the infirmary. Lu Jingtian was throwing a tantrum, but Gu Xingzi's assistant had his ways of calming her down with just a few words. "Miss Lu, do you really want to make a big fuss? The camera was on just now. If you rewind it, you can clearly see what you did just now. Coincidentally, I also saw that scene just now. Xingza is just giving you a way out so that you can lie low for a while. After a pause, she asked, there are so many people here. Do you have to embarrass yourself? She was at a loss for words. I just can't stand her. Why should everyone revolve around her? Miss Yun Shishir is Xingza's female companion at tonight's gala. He values her very much. Yet you're making trouble for her. What are you doing to him? I have no intention of targeting Brother Xingza. He's just giving Director Lu face. Don't do this again next time. Sorry. She finally calmed down and allowed the assistant to help her to the infirmary. This storm had finally come to an end. Chapter 192. In the infirmary, Gu Xingza's assistant, Jin Yu, helped Lu Jingtian into the room. The bed closest to the door was covered in blood. On the bed lay an unconscious woman. Jin Yu was shocked by this terrifying scene. What's wrong with this person? She did not recognize the poor woman in front of her, because the person on the bed was already beyond recognition. She did not recognize her, but Lu Jingtian knew who she was. Was it not her fault that Yun Na ended up in this state? Her face was covered in blood. Even though they had taken measures to stop the bleeding, blood still seeped out of the wound. It was a horrible sight. The infirmary had only done some simple treatment. In a situation like Yun Na's, she still needed to be admitted to the hospital for treatment. Her face was beyond recognition. She was really beyond recognition. For a woman, her life would be completely ruined if her face was in such a state. A cocktail party had completely ruined her bright future. Lu Jingtian had been heavy-handed, but she did not expect this to happen in a fit of anger. For a moment, she was a little shocked and regretful. Therefore, when she pushed the door open and saw Yun Na's miserable appearance, she felt a little guilty. She did not mean to hurt her, but this woman was too shameless. In her anger, she lost her mind. By the time she came back to her senses, her face was already disfigured. Although the eyebrow shaver was small, it was sharp enough. The wound on her face was not deep, but there was a lot of blood. More than a dozen scratches were densely packed and crisscrossed, making it look shocking. However, she had already called her father. Soon, he would send someone over to deal with this matter. When the matter was exposed at most, they would have to compensate a few 100,000 yuan, appease the family's emotions, and suppress the limelight. This matter would be over just like that. If Yun Na wanted to make a big deal out of this matter, she could bribe a substitute to take the blame for her, and this matter would end there. It was easy to deal with a person without power or influence. Lu Jingtian said to Jin Yu, "Please call an ambulance for me. This place is too disgusting. I can't stay here any longer." All right. Jin Yu did not know that there was something fishy about this matter, so she called an ambulance for her. She walked out of the door and dialed the emergency number. Lu Jingtian's foot must have been fractured. Jin Yu knew this in her heart. With such high heels, it would be strange if he wasn't crippled. Once there was no one else in the room, she boldly walked to the bed and lifted the person on it with the tip of her foot. When there was no response, she frowned, a little worried that the person might die. She remembered kicking this woman's vitals several times when she was teaching her a lesson. Could she be dead? She stretched out her hand and checked her breathing. Only when she sensed her rapid breathing did she heave a sigh of relief. "Bitch, don't blame me for being ruthless. You deserve it." Just as she finished speaking, she wanted to withdraw her hand, but her wrist was suddenly held tightly by that blood-stained hand. Lu Jingtian's eyes widened in shock. The person on the bed suddenly opened his eyes. His face was ferocious and his eyes were wide open. His eyes were red as if they were filled with blood. He was like a malicious spirit from purgatory. It was extremely terrifying. "I will kill you. I'll kill you." Yun Na seemed to have woken up from a nightmare. She gripped Lu Jingtian's wrist tightly and cursed through gritted teeth. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost." Chapter 193. Let go. D***M in it. Lu Jingtian was so frightened that she raised her hand to slap Yun Na. Only then did she manage to break free from the latter's grasp and limp out of the door in a panic. She bumped into Jin Yu, who had just contacted the emergency center. Seeing her flustered look, Jin Yu asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Hurry up and send me to the hospital. Even though Jinyu found her odd, she did not want to probe further. Some things were not good to know too much. The vintage palace-style banquet hall, with its exquisite murals and richly ornamented ceiling, gave one the illusion of being in a luxurious palace. After the opening speech by several heavyweight guests from Huanyu Entertainment, it was time for the ball. In the hall, elegant music filled the air. After experiencing all the previous incidents, Han Yuyan and Yang Mi finally behaved themselves. They were considered veteran artists and naturally knew how to act according to the occasion. Hence, they did not make things difficult for Yin Shishir again. Lin Fengtian arrived late. The moment he entered the venue, he was surrounded by female stars, who took turns to flatter and toast him, all for the sake of befriending him. After putting in a lot of effort, Zhang Xian's good mood was ruined. Yin Shishir walked over leisurely with Gu Xingze on her arm. Lin Fengtian's eyes lit up when he saw them, and he exclaimed, "Shishir! Oh gosh! You're so beautiful tonight." The two producers behind him and the assistant director in charge of casting were also stunned by her beauty, and they were not stingy with their compliments. "Thank you for your praise, Director Lin. Producer Li, Director Mong, nice to meet you." Yin Shishir greeted them with a polite smile. "Miss Yin, you remember our names?" Producer Li was a little surprised, and a look of admiration appeared on his face. You and Director Mong were also present during the audition. It's polite to remember the names of the judges. Director Mong laughed. "Director Lin, you have a good eye for talent. This newbie is very humble and polite. With her beauty and talent, she'll definitely have a bright future." "That's right. When have the people I've chosen ever disappointed you?" Lin Fengtian asked back proudly. Gu Xingze smiled and said, "Shishir is a very polite girl. I like that very much." "I like it too." She did not know why, but her face was inexplicably flushed red. Yes, this was a very good point. Unlike some newbies who think they have good resources and don't take others seriously, Director Mong suddenly changed the topic. "But Miss Yun, let me tell you, if you want to be in Director Lin's film, you have to be mentally prepared." Director Lin was famous for being harsh and picky when it came to filming. Before Han Yuyan became famous, she had appeared in one of his shows and was scolded to tears. TSK. He's known as the devil director in the circle. Who knows how many beautiful girls he's ruined? Gu Xingze shook his head helplessly. "Yeah, I've also been scolded by Director Lin." "Huh." Yin Shishir was shocked. "Xingze, your acting has always been good." Gu Xingze pursed his lips and smiled without saying a word. Director Mong laughed and said, "Xingze had just debuted not long ago. When he appeared in Director Lin's show, he was also scolded badly because of one look." Lin Fengtian snorted coldly. "Xingze is so popular now. Doesn't he have to thank me for recognizing his talent?" Chapter 194. Director Lin is very strict when it comes to filming. It's out of respect for his career. When it comes to acting, you have to be strict in order to make a good movie, Yin Shishir said. Everyone looked at each other and exchanged knowing glances. This newcomer was really good, and they all approved of her. After the greetings, Gu Xingze pulled Yin Shishir aside and gently whispered in her ear, "Shishir, let's go dance." "But I don't know how to dance. If I don't dance well, it'll be embarrassing." Yin Shishir was a little scared. Gu Xingze winked at her mysteriously. "Why? Don't you believe in Teacher Gu's teachings?" Without any explanation, he held her hand and walked to the center of the dance floor. He taught her the basic gestures and rhythm of the dance. Then he held her waist and gently held her hand. Yin Shishir also followed his instructions and placed her hand on his shoulder. Their arrival attracted the attention of countless people. The man's handsomeness and the woman's beauty seemed to condense into the most moving picture in the world. At this moment, it made the surrounding area lose its color. Yin Shishir felt the gazes on them and couldn't help but become more timid. "Xingze, don't be afraid. Follow the rhythm." In the VIP seats, Muyaja held a wine glass in one hand and his cold gaze fell on the couple in the middle of the dance floor. His eyes slowly condensed into a vicious fog, and the joints of his fingers holding the wine glass gradually stiffened. Xiao Yichen sat at the side and stared fixedly at Gu Xingze and Yin Shishir. He didn't know why, but he inexplicably felt that this man was very annoying. He hugged his arms angrily and his handsome little face was full of indignation. Let's go dance too? Mu Wanru walked over and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Okay. Mu Yaja pondered for a moment and held her hand. The moment they stepped onto the dance floor, all the guests in the hall focused their attention on them. Compared to Yun Shirshir's clumsiness, who only knew some simple dance steps, Mu Yaja and Mu Wanru's dance was more magnificent. As an upper-class noble, they had been taught from a young age that bearing and dancing were important and inseparable. The elegant dance steps were in tune with the brisk melody, and the exquisite suit set off the man's tall and slender figure. Mu Yaja's graceful dance was captivating. Oh my God, Chairman Mu is so handsome. As expected of the richest family in the capital, even their dancing is so outstanding. His face is like a god's, how can it be so perfect? Boo-hoo. I'm so jealous of the woman beside him. I also want to dance with him. Ha. You? Who are you? Stop daydreaming, it won't be your turn. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but be distracted. She glanced at Mu Yaja from the corner of her eye, and her expression couldn't help but wander and drift. She was looking at him, but he wasn't looking at her. His handsome side profile looked so arrogant and unapproachable. She accidentally stepped on the tip of Gu Xing's shoe. Ah! She exclaimed and looked up apologetically. Her face instantly turned red. I'm sorry. It hurts, Shirshir. Gu Xing's raised his eyebrows helplessly. Where are you looking? Dancing requires full concentration. Otherwise, you'll mess up the dance steps. She nodded absent-mindedly, but she didn't seem to have any intention of continuing the dance. Her heartbeat was suddenly disrupted. Chapter 195. It was as if her entire focus had been taken away by that man. In a moment of absent-mindedness, she accidentally repeated the same mistake. History was repeating itself. Yun Shirshir lowered her head and looked at Gu Xing's handmade leather shoes that she had trampled on twice. The guilt in her eyes seemed to overflow. Shirshir, you're distracted. Gu Xing's frowned and slowed down the rhythm. I didn't, she weakly defended herself. She was also very upset. Why was she suddenly distracted? The scene of Mu Yaja and Mu Wanru dancing together just now was like a thorn that pierced her heart. It was painful and itchy. Yun Shirshir looked up and was still fretting over how to explain herself. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, she saw Mu Yaja holding Mu Wanru's hand and approaching her. Before she could be surprised, she saw Mu Yaja's hand gently push Mu Wanru's waist. He naturally reached out to take Yun Shirshir's left hand and pulled her into his embrace. Before Mu Wanru could react, she was instantly pushed to Gu Xing's side. When she finally came back to her senses, she saw that Mu Yaja had already walked to the center of the dance floor with Yun Shirshir. In a fit of anger, she couldn't flare up on the spot. After all, there were many important guests present. She had no choice but to reluctantly maintain her smile. She turned to look at Gu Xingze and extended her hand. However, Gu Xingze didn't look at her. Instead, he stared coldly in the direction of Mu Yaja and Yun Shirshir. His expression was slowly freezing. Xingze, Mu Wanru couldn't help but feel a little awkward. In any case, let this dance continue. Otherwise, how embarrassing would it be to be abandoned by one's dance partner on the dance floor? Especially when she was at the peak of everyone's attention just now. Now that she was abandoned, if she were to leave with her tail between her legs, she would definitely be laughed at by everyone. She was a little anxious and urged, Xingze. Gu Xingze turned around with a cold face. He looked at Mu Wanru's stiff hand in the air and her eyes that were constantly hinting at him. He said expressionlessly, Forgive me for not accompanying you. With that, he left the dance floor without looking back, leaving Mu Wanru in the same spot, not knowing whether to move or not to move. What was the meaning of this? Was she trying to embarrass her on purpose? It was as if they could hear the merciless mockery from the guests. I've been abandoned. So the so-called young Madame Mu is nothing more than this. Yun Shirshir is more beautiful than her. Any man would be willing to dance with such a beautiful woman. Sigh poor her. After all, she's still CEO Mu's fiancée. She's just a fiancée. They're not even officially married. It's just a title. She can be abandoned at any time. Those sarcastic and mean whispers and merciless mockery pierced her heart in an instant. Mu Wanru kicked Yin Shirshir's back view with a gloomy face. Yin Shirshir. At this moment, all the guests on the dance floor stopped dancing. Some of them were envious, and some of them were stunned. They were mesmerized by the couple dancing in the middle of the dance floor. The beautiful and eye-catching scene really made the world lose its color. Mu Yaja's dance was very elegant. She didn't know what skill he used, but Yin Shirshir, who was still a little slow in the hands of Gu Xingze, seemed to be enlightened in front of him. Whether it was the dance steps or the melody, it was perfect. Chapter 196. Mu Wanru clenched her fists tightly. She wished she could cut this Yin Shirshir into pieces right now. Seeing her standing there alone, Alan immediately walked forward. As soon as he reached her side, he could easily smell the gorgeous fragrance on her body. In an instant his mind was stirred up. The scene from before suddenly appeared in his mind. In the assistant's office of Disheng Financial Group, he had taken advantage of her to his heart's content. The carefree feeling of being in perfect harmony with her was unforgettable. For so many years, his feelings for her seemed to only exist in his fantasies. That day, all his dreams finally came true. The nervousness and excitement of having an affair stimulated his hormones to the extreme, and he finally stopped restraining himself. Unfortunately, after that, Mu Wanru was lukewarm toward him. She even ignored him. He tried all sorts of ways to get close to her, but she always found all sorts of reasons to avoid meeting him. That day's incident seemed to be the end of their incestuous relationship. Alan had mocked her more than once. Did she not care about him now that he was no longer of any use to her? "Madam, if you don't mind, I'll dance with you." He was being kind and wanted to ease her awkward situation. Being abandoned by Chairman Mu on the dance floor and Gu Xingze ignoring her, she must be in a very awkward situation. "What dance? I'm not dancing anymore." Mu Wanru angrily turned to leave the dance floor. Aaron chased after her with a nervous look on his face. "Don't follow me," she said angrily, driving him away mercilessly. "Madam." Mu Wanru walked to a secluded corner and suddenly turned around to glare at him. "Go away, don't bother me." "Wanru." Alan mustered up his courage and grabbed her wrist in a corner of the corridor. He did not let go. Mu Wanru was slightly taken aback by his overly intimate form of address. Her heart skipped a beat before she reacted and turned around to give him a slap. Slap. It was a crisp and clear sound. "Why are you calling my name? Are you afraid that others can't hear you? Aren't you afraid of gossip?" Alan said confidently, "I'm not afraid." "I'm afraid." Mu Wanru tried her best to suppress her anger and pretended to be calm. "Alan, you have to know who you are. I'm still Chairman Mu's fiancé, and you're my fiancé's assistant. Please show some respect." Ellen stared at her, but he didn't say anything for a long time. His eyes were burning. "Let go. You. Let go of me." Mu Wanru panicked. She reached out her hand to break free. Her face was filled with anger. "What do you want?" Ellen said with a lonely expression. "Are you going to cut ties with me now? What do you take me for?" As if struck by lightning, Mu Wanru immediately requested, That matter, please forget about it." "Forget? It clearly happened, so how could I pretend to have lost my memory?" "Wanru, you enjoyed it that day too, didn't you? You're not pretending, are you? You want me to, don't you?" Alan asked again and again. His explicit words made Mu Wanru's heart jump. "Stop talking." She wanted to give him another slap until he woke up. Although she was Mu Yaja's fiancé, it was only in name. Not to mention bed matters, even basic intimacy was very rare. She was also a woman. Naturally, she also had needs to vent in terms of men and women. That day, she really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure that she had not tasted for many years. It made her body and mind sink. Chapter 197. After he confirmed the destruction of Yin Shirshir and Yun Tianyo's information, she gave him the cold shoulder and avoided him, pretending that the incident that day did not exist. He asked bitterly, "Are you abandoning me now that I'm no longer of any use to you? Or is it that my feelings aren't firm enough and you don't believe me?" "Shut up." Mu Wanru said helplessly, "I can't leave him, just give up. There's no possibility between us." Their relationship was nothing more than a love that could not see the light of day. Although it had already sprouted, she wanted to strangle it in the cradle. Wanru, I've never asked for a status. I only want to be with you. Even if it can't see the light of day, I'm not afraid. It's not like you haven't seen Muyaja's methods. Are you really willing to betray him for me? Mu Wanru's expression changed. She had clearly thought of something. This Aaron was still useful to her. She might as well make use of him a few more times. Yin Shirshir had not been completely eradicated yet, and she was lacking manpower. Alan confessed affectionately. For you, I'm willing to climb a mountain of swords and plunge into a sea of fire. Even if I have to tread on fire, I'm willing to do so. Really? Mu Wanru's eyes flashed. She gave a sinister smile and pretended to be weak. Are you really willing to do anything for me? Yes. Yes. He nodded heavily. That's great. Mu Wanru said hatefully, Yin Shirshir has always been a thorn in my side. Get rid of her for me. I want her to be utterly ruined. Blood flashed in his eyes. He looked like a servant bewitched by a demoness. Even if there was a bottomless abyss in front of him, he would not hesitate to risk his life for her. Wanru, what should I do? What do you want me to do? Tonight, the company's top management wants to see her. Help me send this woman to Director Lee's bed. Remember, you must do it flawlessly and cleanly. Aaron nodded heavily, his eyes showing determination. I'll make sure she has no chance to rise again. Mu Wanru said fiercely. She then smiled charmingly, and pushed open the door of a suite. Leaning against the door, she hooked her finger at him. Alan walked over as if he was obsessed. Mu Wanru smiled mischievously. She reached out and hooked Alan's shoulder, leading him into the room. She turned around and saw the door close. Now this room only belonged to them. The woman smiled coquettishly and held his shoulder. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his thin lips. Her breath was like orchids. Alan, hold me tight. Quick. She seemed a little impatient. Muyaja had never laid a finger on her. She had even suspected that he had some kind of hidden disease in that area. It wasn't until 6 years ago when that woman became pregnant with his child that she understood that he just didn't want to touch her. He must not have been mentally prepared, right? Mu Wanru was not willing to give up. She swore that she would win his heart sooner or later. She was determined to win this smokeless war between the rich and powerful. Under her encouragement, Alan became excited. It turned out that she really had him in her heart. She must have some feelings for him. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a second time. The two of them were completely immersed in a happy world. Outside the door, a man in a suit pressed the stop button on the recording pen in his hand, when he heard a soft gasp coming from inside the room. He pushed the frame of his glasses up his nose. His handsome face was full of disgust and contempt. Boss is right. This Alan has long been rebellious. He played with the recording pen in his hand and sneered. Good evidence. Chapter 198. The music didn't stop in the middle of the dance floor. Muyaja held Yin Shirshir's hand and danced to the elegant melody. His soul-stirring eyes were on her shy face and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. She had been lowering her head from the beginning. Yin Shirshir still couldn't forget what that man had done to her, so she was a bit absent-minded and didn't dare look up at his face. On the other hand, he always had an elegant and calm demeanor. His nonchalant expression made it seem as if everything was under his control. His desire to control was really strong, especially. Yin Shirshir's face turned even redder at the thought of that charming scene. She gritted her teeth and wanted to shake his hand off and run away from him. He would always appear in her world without any explanation, provoking her and disturbing her mind. Then, with a leisurely attitude, he would wantonly enjoy her helplessness and panic. How could this man be so evil? She couldn't help being absent-minded and making mistakes in her dance steps. Muyaja lowered his head to look at her and lightly commented, Miss Yin, your dancing is too stiff. Yin Shirshir bit her lips and said, I don't know how to dance. I only know some simple dance steps. You can laugh at me all you want. Muyaja raised a brow as his thin lips curled into a slight curve. You're really covered in thorns. There's no soft spot on you. You're like a hedgehog. I'm a hedgehog, Yin Shirshir said. I'm fully armed to protect myself. Protecting herself would also hurt the person who really wanted to love her. The man looked at her. She seemed to have restrained her sharpness, but her eyes were staring at him warily, as if she was alert that he was doing something bad to her so she could fight back immediately. She was really like a little mommy covered in injuries, always staring at anyone who wanted to get close to her. Her eyes were filled with uneasiness, bewilderment, and wariness. A woman who was both stubborn and fragile at the same time. What a contradiction. Relax and follow the rhythm. Dancing is easy. On the second floor, Yun Tianyu was so angry that he stomped Li Hanlin's foot when he saw this scene. The latter picked him up with a bitter face and said aggrievedly, "Director Yun, you can't just stomp on me to vent your anger. This man is obviously wooing my mommy. I won't allow it. I won't allow it." He wanted to stop this man. His mommy was his and his alone. How could he allow anyone to barge into their world and call himself king? Usually Yun Tianyu was unruffled, as if everything was under his control. However, when it came to his mommy, he always lost control. In front of outsiders, he could be indifferent and calm. However, in front of Yun Shishir, he was just a little lad who had yet to grow up and was only willing to be his mommy's warm little jacket. "Director Yun, please calm down." In the VIP seats, Xiaoyi Chen downed an entire glass of fruit juice. He was clearly feeling down. Looking at Yun Shishir, who was in the middle of the dance floor, he wished that he could grow up quickly and become a tall man like his daddy, so that he could dance with this beautiful sister. Chapter 199. His thoughts seemed to be drawn as those fragmented dreams flashed in his mind. In his dreams, he seemed to see a little boy who was about the same age as him. His facial features were exactly the same as his, with soft hair and handsome eyebrows. However, that delicate and pretty face seemed a little indifferent. In his dreams, he was always standing far away from him with a cold face. With his back facing him, he walked forward silently. The images were so real that they seemed to be within reach. He always chased after him recklessly, but no matter how he walked or ran, he could not catch up. As he walked further and further away, he woke up from his dreams in fear. When he woke up, his whole body was covered in cold sweat. The realistic dream made him feel as if he had overdrawn his energy. There were a few times when he dreamt that the little boy was lying on a bed. His soul seemed to have been substituted into this body, and he could not move. A woman sat by the bed. The outline of her face was indistinct, and he could not see it clearly. He could only vaguely make out her gentle eyes. She kept caressing his face, and her eyes were as gentle as water. That dream was long and torturous. When he woke up, he felt that his limbs were extremely heavy and his head was dizzy. The family doctor diagnosed him with a high fever for no apparent reason. Coming back to his senses, Xiaoyi Chen stared fixedly at Yun Tianyu's face. That face overlapped with that of the child in his dreams. "It's you!" he cried out in surprise. His voice was not loud, so it was quickly drowned out by the dance music. However, as if he had telepathy, the boy turned to look at him, only to see him nimbly climbing up the stairs with his short legs and running toward him. Yun Tianyu was startled. What was this little rascal doing here? Was he here to look for him? "Director Yun, that young Master Mu seems to be looking for you." Yun Tianyu could not see him, but with his height advantage, Li Hanlin could easily see Xiaoyi Chen's figure running up the stairs and chasing after Yun Tianyu. "Let's go, ignore him." With that, Yu turned to leave. Li Hanlin followed closely behind him with nimble footsteps. Seeing this, Xiaoyi Chen panted and reached out his hand. Don't run." Why was he running? He was not a ghost. Was he avoiding him? Xiaoyi Chen stomped his feet in dissatisfaction and continued chasing after Yu. Yu had amazing stamina, but when he turned back and saw Xiaoyi Chen catching up to him, his expression changed. "Short legs, you run pretty fast." Li Hanlin held his little hand and said helplessly, "Why must we run, President Yun?" "I don't want to see him." Yun Tianyu replied snappily. "I don't want to acknowledge him as my brother." "How stupid." "I find." L. Li Hanlin broke out in a cold sweat and didn't say anything else. Yun Tianyu did not sleep well last night, so he was panting from running. He suddenly said, "Agent Li, carry me." Hearing this, Li Hanlin bent over and lifted him over his head. Yun Tianyu naturally sat on his shoulders, grabbed his ears and ordered seriously, "Run faster and shake him off." Li Hanlin had the height advantage after all. Every step he took with his long legs was equivalent to Xiao Yichen taking 3 steps. In less than 10 seconds, he had shaken him off. Xiao Yichen stood on the spot with a gloomy face. Panting, he put his hands on his waist and stomped his feet angrily. Ugh! I lost him. Who was that little boy? Chapter 200. Boss, I've done as you instructed. In the VIP seats, a man in a suit stood respectfully beside Muyaja and handed him an exquisite recording pen. He cocked a brow and glanced at the man from the corner of his eyes. Which room is it? 208. Muyaja kept the recording pen in his suit pocket as his thin lips curled into a cold smile. This small fish has taken the bait, but the big fish hasn't made a move yet. He picked up a glass of wine and swirled the scarlet liquid in it. His voice was languid and deep. This big fish has been waiting for a few years. It's about time for it to come out of the water, right? The man nodded. Now that the people in the conglomerate are unpredictable, the board of directors is... Chairman Mu. A crisp voice interrupted the man's words. Muyaja looked up unhappily and saw Tang Yu shyly walking toward him with a glass of wine in her hand. Emboldened by the alcohol, she tried to get closer to him. Chairman Mu, why are you sitting here alone? Isn't young Mistress Mu by your side? As she spoke, a smile bloomed on her face that she thought was charming. She swayed her seductive body and sat down beside him. The shoulder straps of her gown unknowingly slid down her shoulders, revealing her fair and charming neck. She drank a little wine, which naturally boosted her courage. She saw Muyaja inviting Yin Shishir to a dance earlier. It turned out that he was not that unattainable. If Yin Shishir could be his dance partner, there were naturally women who could be his bed partner too. If she could climb into his bed, would she not be able to fly to the top in the future? She was confident in herself. She was young, beautiful, and most importantly, had a good figure. Many big bosses liked her, but she was not interested in their status. She was not that ambitious. In other words, unlike Lu Jingtian, she did not want to marry into a rich family. She only wanted to use Muyaja's power to climb up the social ladder quickly. She had been in the entertainment industry for a long time, but she had always been suppressed by Yang Yangchang had a sugar daddy supporting her. But what about her? Tang Yu had always wanted to find someone with a high net worth to secure her position in the circle. Therefore, she targeted Muyaja. Tang Yu sat down beside him as if there was no one else around. Now that Mu Wanru was not around, she was even more relaxed. Her every movement was full of charm. Chairman Mu, is no one drinking with you? Muyaja looked at her, his thin lips pursed and his face expressionless. The man beside her wanted to chase her away, but Muyaja raised his hand to stop him. The man was slightly surprised. Seeing this, Tang Yu was overjoyed. This meant, could it be that Muyaja was interested in her? Thinking of this possibility, Tang Yu couldn't wait to hug him passionately. Chairman Mu, why aren't you saying anything? How about I have a drink with you? Her coquettish words gave people goosebumps all over. Alas, Muyaja was very calm. He flirted with her hair and played with it with his fingers. Is there anyone booking you tonight? No. Chairman Mu, do you mean? Her heart thumped wildly, and she was extremely nervous. Looking at him up close, she was surprised to find him so handsome. She was over the moon at the thought of this man being interested in her. Muyaja smiled. Accompany me tonight, then. Chapter 201. Unknowingly, half of the banquet was already over. The media had already cleared the venue, and the reporters had all gone home to prepare tomorrow's headlines. At this moment, the entire venue seemed to have shed its dignified disguise, as if a mask had been removed, revealing the drunken state of the party. It was as if the real cocktail party had just begun, and the real theme had officially begun. There was no lack of powerful and influential people attending this cocktail party. With the help of the alcohol, they all began to search for prey on the scene. At this moment, many female artistes who could not hold their liquor were already tipsy. There was no room for discussion. As long as they picked someone, they would immediately take them away. Many newcomers were ignorant of the ways of the world. After drinking a few glasses of specially prepared wine, they were completely drunk. Yang Mi was also drunk. She leaned against Li Jiuxian, and their faces were very close to each other. Without the presence of the media, she was much bolder. She intimately hugged Li Jiuxian's shoulder and whispered into his ear. Han Yuyan glanced at them and secretly used her phone to capture a few images. Yang Mi and Li Jiuxian were rumored to have fallen in love with each other. However, both of them denied their relationship, saying that it was just a media hype. However, in reality, relationships between men and women in this industry were not that simple. There were many who were too immersed in their roles and turned the fake into reality. However, if Yang Mi admitted her relationship, it would be a huge blow to her popularity. She was not stupid. She was just using Li Jiuxian's great momentum to hype herself up. In a quiet VIP area, Yun Shishir leaned on the sofa. Her entire vision was a little blurry. She did not drink much tonight, but her alcohol tolerance was shockingly low. After taking a sip, her entire face flushed red. After drinking a glass, her vision was spinning. When she came down from the dance floor, Lin Fengtian led a few investors over to her and asked her to propose a toast. Yun Shishir did not dare to refuse. She naturally trusted Lin Fengtian's character. Hence, she did not drink a glass of wine. It was just a glass, but she was already swaying left and right. When Lin Fengtian saw this, he was so shocked that his face turned pale. He thought that Yun Shishir would be able to drink a little. He did not expect her to be so drunk after just one glass. He quickly helped her to the side and called for Qin Zhou. Qin Zhou was originally drinking for Guxingzi. Just when he was in full swing, Lin Fengtian ran over and told him that Yun Shishir was drunk. He rolled his eyes. No way. Is her alcohol tolerance that bad? He looked defeated. His life as a manager was really tough. Not only was Guxingzi not a good drinker, but he also had to help Yun Shishir clean up the mess. He sighed, but there was nothing he could do. Qin Zhou was very fond of Yun Shishir, so he rushed over. Sure enough, she was in a daze. Let's send her back first. Lin Fengtian, who was standing at the side, lost his temper and was speechless. All right, Director Lin, I'll have to trouble you to help me deal with this. Lin Fengtian waved his hand disdainfully at him. Qin Zhou walked out of the hotel with Yun Shishir in his arms. A man who looked like a concierge immediately came forward and said enthusiastically, "Sir, would you like me to arrange a special car for you?" "Yes. Hurry up and arrange a car to send this lady home." Qin Zhou nodded and did not think much of it. The concierge immediately took out his walkie-talkie and seemed to be making arrangements for him. Chapter 202. The car arrived quickly. It was a black Santana. Qin Zhou was about to help Yun Shishir into the car, but he was stopped by the concierge. "What's wrong?" Qin Zhou frowned, feeling that something was amiss. The concierge smiled and said politely, "Sir, let me send this lady to the car. May I ask where she lives?" Qin Zhou glanced at him and smiled playfully. "The service is so good." "Of course." Qin Zhou looked down at the unconscious Yun Shishir in his arms and felt a little worried. If possible, it would be best to send her back personally. He was still a little worried about her. However, the service of the Imperial Palace Hotel was first class. He naturally trusted it and didn't suspect anything. He had seen her resume and knew where she lived, so he gave him the address. "Then you can send her home personally. Golden Star City International Apartment. When you reach the door, please help this lady upstairs." The concierge bowed elegantly. "It's my honor. I will send this lady home safely." Qin Zhou handed her over to him. The concierge helped Yun Shishir into the back seat, closed the door, and sat in the front passenger seat. However, at an angle that Qin Zhou couldn't see clearly, he handed a business card to the driver. "Go here." On the business card, it was West Taihu Villa District, the residence of Huan Yu's high-ranking director Li. The latter understood tacitly and naturally understood that the woman sitting in the back row had been chosen by some big shot. The Santana left. Qin Zhou looked at the black car in the distance and felt a little uneasy. He regretted that he should have sent her back personally. However, there were still a few brands waiting for him to negotiate at the banquet. One of the endorsements was the highlight of the night. He must be thinking too much. From the driver to Li Bin, they were all people from the Imperial Palace Hotel. What trouble could there be? Qin Zhou took a deep breath and turned back to the hotel. The black car drove quickly on the road, and the street outside the window flashed by at high speed. It was extremely thrilling. The concierge sitting in the front passenger seat suddenly took out his phone and dialed a number. On the other end, a man's voice came. "How's it going?" "Mr. Allen, Miss Yin Shershur is already in the car. Please don't worry, we will do as you say," Allen warned. "Don't give anything away. Clean it up." "Yes." The concierge hung up the phone and looked at the person in the back seat. He saw Yin Shershur leaning against the car window with her eyebrows knitted. She was obviously uncomfortable. On the other end, Aaron hung up the call and turned his head. He saw Mu Wanru standing in front of the dressing mirror, meticulously applying her makeup. She didn't even turn her head as she asked, "Has everything been arranged properly?" "Yes, Wanru, don't worry. I've already made the arrangements. There won't be any problems. When the time comes, contact with the press to tell them that there's a big story tonight. By tomorrow, the scandal about her will be all over the place." Mu Wanru smiled with a vicious glint in her eyes. The new generation of Phoenix girl actually slept with a sugar daddy and climbed to the top through unspoken rules. "Aaron, what do you think of this headline?" "This is truly flawless." Allen walked over and planted a kiss on her forehead. Mu Wanru responded enthusiastically, smiling coquettishly. "Aaron, your performance today was amazing." Chapter 203. Ai Luan, you did great today. In what way? Ai Luan was in a good mood and teased her. In bed and haha. Mu Wanru poked his chest with her slender finger, her expression ambiguous. Ai Luan was attracted by her seductive look and couldn't help but lean on her again. "Wanru, can I have more?" "No. You're too greedy. You're too greedy. You've already taken me twice. Stop messing around." "Aha. Okay, I'll stop." Ai Luan let go of her obediently. Mu Wanru stood up. Under her meticulous makeup, she still looked elegant and noble. "Yin Shershur, let's see where you can escape tonight." On the way, the Santana sped all the way to the West Taihu Lake Villa. However, at some point in time, the car's headlights kept flashing, piercing their eyes. The loud roar of the sports car lingered in their ears like an angry lion, roaring and glaring at them. "What's wrong with this car? It's been chasing us since just now." The driver adjusted the angle of the rearview mirror, and the long shots behind him kept flashing, almost blinding him. It was a limited edition Bugatti Veyron worth tens of millions. Its price was self-evident. "Don't worry about him. Just drive your car." The concierge didn't care about anything else and ordered the driver to drive. Behind them, the sports car's horn was blaring. Seeing that the Santana didn't show any signs of stopping, the Bugatti Veyron stepped on the accelerator, changed lanes and overtook the Santana easily. It drifted in front and stopped in the middle of the road, blocking the driver's way. The driver was shocked and quickly stepped on the brakes, stopping a few feet away from the sports car. He was so shocked that he froze in his seat, his forehead covered in cold sweat. The concierge was also shocked. However, before they could react, the car door in front of them opened. A tall man was closing in against the moonlight. The driver was full of questions. "Who's this?" "Who knows? I don't know him either." Muyaja walked to the side of the Santana and looked down at the back seat. Yin Shershur was leaning against the seat in a daze. Her eyes were closed, and her brows were furrowed. She seemed to be enduring the discomfort. He raised his brows elegantly and his thin lips curled into a cold smile. The car window rolled down. The driver stuck his head out and scolded him. "Idiot, why are you blocking the road? Don't drag others into your death wish." The man ordered, "Unlock it." "Ha. Door unlock." A stumbling figure came out of the sports car. Tang Yu got out of the car immediately after she got out of the car. She had drunk a lot of alcohol, and the car was speeding along the way. She even ran a few red lights. In order to maintain her image, she did not vomit in the car. "What are you doing? It can't be a robbery, right?" The driver was terrified. "But it's impossible. I've never seen anyone driving a car worth tens of millions to rob a Santana." "What are you trying to do?" "My woman is in the car." The driver's lips twitched. "Are you kidding? Your woman? Who are you? I don't have much patience." 1, 2. In the silent night, the sound of a gun being loaded could be heard. The next second, the cold muzzle of a gun was pressed against the driver's forehead. The dark muzzle of the gun was emitting cold air. Chapter 204. The chauffeur's face was pale, and his lips were trembling in fear. Click. The car door was unlocked. Muyaja carried Yun Shirshir, who was in a daze, out of the car. She was so thin that he could easily carry her in his arms with one hand. With the other hand, he carried Tangyu over and pushed her into the car. With a bang, the car door was closed. The chauffeur was even more confused. What's going on? Muyaja said. You got the wrong person. This woman is the one. The chauffeur was speechless. Tangyu was thrown into the back seat by Muyaja. Then the car door was locked. She couldn't open the car door, and she was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She was scared out of her wits. She didn't understand why Muyaja threw her into an unfamiliar car. She was so anxious that she hit the car door with all her might. With a ferocious face she cried, Chairman Mu, what do you mean by this? Why did you throw me into this car? Didn't I follow you tonight? Drive. Muyaja ignored her and said coldly to the chauffeur. As soon as he finished speaking, the chauffeur stepped on the accelerator as if he had been granted amnesty. He sped away with Tangyu's screams. Poor Tangyu. She was naive and delusional to think that she could hook up with Muyaja and rely on him. However, in Muyaja's eyes, she was a bait, and to put it bluntly, she was just a scapegoat. Not far away, a phaeton rushed over. Minyu pushed the frame of his glasses up his nose and got out of the car. He saw Yun Shirshir in Muyaja's arms. This woman seemed to be drunk and was now unconscious. She was leaning on the man's chest in a daze, and her body was moving around uneasily. He said softly, Boss, this is Yun Shirshir. Muyaja's eyes softened when he said her name. So it's her. Minyu exclaimed and praised from the bottom of his heart. This woman is beautiful. She looks like she walked out of a painting. As soon as he finished speaking, Muyaja's expression changed, and he looked at him coldly. Do I need you to judge me? There was a dangerous look in his eyes, and Minyu immediately broke out in cold sweat. The boss was very possessive. He had only taken a glance, but the boss was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey, as if guarding against his covetous intentions. How would he dare? However, he soon understood his boss's intention. At first, he thought that the boss was really interested in Tangyu, but he didn't expect that Tangyu was just a scapegoat. Two-faced, he was too two-faced. You can't offend the boss or you won't even know how you died. Muyaja carried Yun Shirshir to the back seat and closed the door. Boss, where are you going? Minyu asked. Go home. Muyaja said calmly. Minyu knew very well that the home he was referring to was not the Mu residence. You're in charge of following up. Boss, don't worry. Muyaja replied calmly, then lowered his head to look at the drunken woman in his arms. At this moment, she was lying on his chest, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. Her eyelids drooped, and she narrowed them into slits. Her eyes were glittering, but her little mouth was pouting. She muttered softly, but her words were vague and intermittent, so he couldn't hear her clearly. Chapter 205. Her alcohol tolerance was really good. When she was drunk, she would curl up in a corner like a cat and curl up into a ball. One of the investors seemed to be interested in her. He sat beside her and stared at her like a cheetah eyeing its prey. He wanted to take action, but considering that Lin Fengtian was present, he didn't have the guts and could only watch. How could he not understand the man's thoughts? Such a tempting and delicious food was in front of him, but he couldn't touch it, or eat it. Naturally, his heart was itching. However, Lin Fengtian seemed to be very protective of her, so it wasn't easy to take action. However, this woman was really too precious. She was drunk to this extent with just a glass of wine? She dared to barge into such a luxurious cocktail party with this little bit of skill. To her, this place was no different from a dangerous wolf's den. Didn't she know that she was like a tender lamb? With displeasure, Muyaja ruffled her hair until it was a mess. Only then did he stop. Yun Shirshir looked up unhappily and glared at him with her watery almond-shaped eyes. She raised her fists and punched his chest a few times. It looked like she had used some strength, but he felt that it wasn't even enough to tickle him. Oh, bad guy. Bad guy. This woman had become bolder. However, he was indeed a bad guy and had committed a heinous crime. That was because she hadn't seen him before. How could he be bad? The car stopped under the shade of the trees. Under the cover of the night, Muyaja suddenly smiled evilly and lifted her up to sit on his lap. His figure was so tall, and such a delicate girl was sitting on his lap in a daze. She was swaying from side to side, and the corners of her lips curled up in an intoxicated manner. From time to time, she would let out an innocent laugh. Her voice was so soft that it seeped into his bones. He enjoyed her enchanting drunkenness without restraint. Her original naivety faded away and added a bit of charm. She had a charming charm of a little woman. Muyaja reached out his hand and gently lifted her chin with one finger. His fingertip rubbed against her lips. Yin Shirshir blinked her eyes and bit his fingertip. Her red lips gently sucked on it as her teeth rubbed against his knuckles with alternating heavy and light forces. His pupils dilated and he raised his eyebrows in shock. This kitten not only knew how to scratch people, but she also knew how to bite people. However, she was drunk after all, and her bite didn't hurt or itch. On the contrary, it stirred up his suppressed undercurrent. He wrapped his arms around her neck and lowered his head to kiss her little mouth. He casually swept his lips across hers, and the tip of his tongue slid into the gap between her lips. Yin Shirshir pushed his shoulders repeatedly as if she had been startled. She clenched her fists and pounded on his shoulders. Her brows furrowed even deeper as she shook her head and murmured dreamily, "Don't. No. Let go of me." Muyaja raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. However, he heard a trace of panic in her voice as she kept saying, "You're a bad person. Don't touch me." Interesting. The man saw that she was easy to bully. He reached out and pinched the tip of her nose until she couldn't breathe. Then he waved his hand in a flurry. Fun. As if he had found an interesting scene, Muyaja provocatively pinched her chin, and then her cheeks. It was like a child playing with his beloved toy. Ah. Yin Shirshir couldn't stand the disturbance. She angrily slapped away his mischievous hand. Chapter 206. Guxingzi. As soon as she said that, Muyaja's face suddenly darkened and turned cold. At that moment, the atmosphere seemed to have frozen over. It was as if the hot summer had suddenly fallen into 1,000 feet of ice. A trace of anger appeared on the man's somewhat displeased face. His pair of phoenix eyes that were as deep as the abyss were dyed with a bit of anger. Now she was in his arms and calling out another man's name. To a proud man like Muyaja, this was undoubtedly a disguised provocation. She actually called out another man's name. This stupid woman. Whose name are you calling? He pinched her waist in anger. It was neither light nor hard, making her laugh foolishly. It's so ticklish. Don't bite me. Yin Shirshir hugged his shoulders. Her bell-like laughter drifted in the wind like a pleasant wind chime. Did she think he was joking with her? Damn it. He suddenly grabbed her cheeks and used a bit of strength with his fingertips, deliberately pinching her to hurt her. Oh, it hurts, Yin Shirshir cried out in pain. Because of the pain, she started to whimper like a kitten. She tried to struggle, but to no avail. She could only clench her hands into fists and swing them at his shoulders. However, her vision was blurry and her fists missed. Bastard. Let go of me. She bit her lips in grievance and helplessness. She twisted her body left and right, trying to break free. However, the man's strength was so great that she couldn't move at all. However, it didn't matter if she didn't move. Once she moved, their bodies would rub against each other, and it would be hard to avoid a misfire. At this moment, due to her drunkenness, her body was boiling hot. Even through the gauze of her dress, he felt as if he was being ironed by her fiery skin. Unknowingly, his body was already drenched in sweat from trying to restrain himself. This woman didn't realize how terrible the consequences of her actions were. If she was sober, she would definitely see the man's handsome face right in front of her. It was terrifying. Oh. The man forced her to raise her face and look him in the eye, his eyes glaring like a tiger. Whose name are you calling? Guxingzi. The little woman's eyes widened as she stared at him with an innocent and playful smile on her face. Suddenly, she reached out her hand and with a smack, she cupped his handsome face and rubbed it. What? Isn't that Guxingzi? Huff huff. His expression was blurred and intoxicated. It was obvious that he was quite drunk. However, he liked the way she looked when she was drunk. She was like a clingy kitten, snuggling into his arms, acting like a rascal and acting coquettishly as much as she wanted. It was as if his arms were her own world. That small face was truly captivating. Her charming eyes were like silk, and at this moment, her watery eyes were tainted with a bit of drunkenness. She looked at him with infatuation, as if she wanted to say something. That captivating charm made it seem as if water could drip out of her eyes. In the depths of her pupils, it was as if a charming flower had bloomed. What made him dissatisfied was that this woman seemed to be unable to recognize the situation in front of her, and even more unable to recognize who he was. Muyaja's cold eyes were filled with danger. Who am I? I don't know. Yin Shirshir tried her best to pry his wrist away. She said pitifully it hurts. Don't. Let go of me. Muyaja slowly narrowed his eyes. His face immediately darkened, and there was a faint murderous aura around him. Who am I? Ugh! Muyaja was angry. He lowered his head and almost fiercely bit her lips. She groaned in pain. She couldn't avoid it, and her whole body shivered. The lips were the softest part of the face, especially her lips. They were as fragile as cherry blossom petals, sparkling and moist, as if they could be broken by the slightest breeze. When he bit down, his strength was not small, leaving a shallow but sexy bite mark. Go away. Bastard. Bastard. She patted him on the shoulder and muttered in her sleep, obviously dissatisfied with his bullying. What a stupid woman. Was she drunk? Was he that drunk? That drunk? Was she so drunk that she didn't even know who was in front of her and whose arms she was in? It was him today, so she was safe and sound. But if he hadn't been alert enough, would she have known what would have happened next? Would she have expected it? Where was the Guxingzi that she missed so much? Would he be able to protect her? He sneered in his heart. He was very displeased with this woman's carelessness. If he hadn't predicted that there would be people who couldn't tolerate her and would try to trip her up again and again, if he hadn't appeared in time, she would have been swallowed alive and skinned until there wasn't even a trace of her left. What he was angry about was not that she was dead drunk. What he was angry about was that she clearly knew how much alcohol she could hold, yet she still let herself go. Could it be that she was so at ease? She was drunk and the person she met was him. If it was another man, would she also be able to show off her flirtatious side without any restraint? Were they like weak sheep that could be slaughtered at anyone's mercy? Muyaja's eyes were burning with fire. His usually cold eyes were tainted with flames, and he wanted to burn her to ashes. This stupid woman, how could he let her go so easily? He wanted to make her deeply aware of whose territory she was in, and what kind of situation she was in. If he didn't let her experience some pain, she wouldn't know where she was wrong. His large palm reached into the hem of her gown and tore it forcefully. The priceless gown was torn into two by him. He threw the troublesome dress to one side and held her waist with his large palm, lifting her up high. Who am I? His cold voice sounded even colder in the breeze. It stimulated her misty thoughts and tried to pull her back to her senses. I don't know. Look clearly, who am I? Muyaja fiercely left a bite mark on her shoulder. He would never stop until he achieved his goal. Yin Shirshir tried her best to open her eyes wide, but in front of her, it was already a blur. Her body was very special, and she had never touched a drop of alcohol. Drinking a glass of dry red wine in one gulp was her limit. The drunkenness came quickly and fiercely, but it faded slowly. Her eyes were still a blur, so how could she see a person clearly? What did he look like? She could only rely on her remaining senses to touch the man's face. It was cold from the night breeze. She touched his lips, which were similarly cold, thin and biting cold. Muyaja saw that her mind was still unclear, so he fiercely pinched her again. Holding her face, he brought his face closer to hers. His pair of sharp eyes stared at her as he asked again, "Who am I?" Chapter 207. This time, she finally managed to get a good look at him. Her small face seemed to crumble as if the world had collapsed on it. I don't know you. She sounded like she was throwing a tantrum. She didn't know him? Or was she trying to fool around under the influence of alcohol and pretending not to know him? Could it be that she was going against him on purpose? You don't know me? Yin Shirshir turned her face away. She didn't want to see him. She was using the alcohol as an excuse to throw a tantrum at him. Although she was in a dream, she could still recognize who the man in front of her was. But she was angry and didn't want to bother with him. Even if she didn't bother with him, he had ways to make her bother with him. Yin Shirshir's body stiffened abruptly when she felt the hand roaming under her skirt. Her face instantly turned pale. Don't touch me. Jerk, I don't want you. Go away. You have a fiancé and a woman. Why do you still want to provoke me? Why do I have to be bullied by you and suffer your anger? Why? He had a fiancé, didn't he? She even saw him hugging Tang Yu and rubbing their heads together after they got off the dance floor. He was no different from other men. He was an animal who thought with his lower body. Mu Yaja continued to turn his face around. His eyes were half-lidded and his lips were cold. Thinking about it made her even angrier. She said angrily, I want to get off the car. The moment she said that, the man pulled her arm forcefully. Mu Yaja scooped her up and pulled her into his embrace. Yin Shirshir was shocked. She couldn't help but gasp. In the blink of an eye, he had already carried her up and straddled her. Mu Yaja's eyes revealed a playful smile. He lifted his thin lips and said in a low and seductive voice, Woman, do you have to be stubborn with me? Call my name. No. Mu Yaja was dissatisfied with her stubbornness. He rubbed her plump breasts through her clothes. Scream. Yin Shirshir's body trembled slightly. Her face immediately tensed up as a bad premonition arose in her heart. Yin Shirshir struggled uneasily, but the man clasped her waist tightly. His large palm pressed against her back, pressing her even closer to his chest. The two faces were so intimately close, the tips of their noses touching, and the breath of their lips touching. Such a close distance really made her feel uncomfortable. Looking at the demonic handsome face that was just inches away, Yin Shirshir helplessly pushed against his chest. This man, how could his strength be so great that she didn't even have the slightest room to struggle? She looked away helplessly, but her chin was tightly pinched by his long fingers. She was forced to face his face. She was forced to look at his face. Her eyes narrowed in pain and were faintly moist. Her soft red lips were crystal clear, just like a delicious cherry. He fiercely captured her lips and sucked on them. That soft and sweet feeling was even better than what he had imagined. Once he kissed her, he couldn't stop. His body heated up and he greedily wanted more. Kissing her cherry lips, his right hand reached into the hem of her clothes. He was in the mood and continued to do what he hadn't done earlier. Her body was extremely sensitive. Just a light touch and she couldn't help but tremble. Her fair cheeks flushed red shyly, but it looked even more alluring. Chapter 208. He had really misjudged this girl. He had once compared her to a kitten. Now that he thought about it, she was actually a beautiful and flirtatious poppy flower. One couldn't help but sink deeper and deeper into it. Yin Shirshir was quite frightened by this sudden action. She was a little embarrassed and even more frightened. She pushed his chest with all her might. However, her weak strength was not worth mentioning to Mu Yaja, who had trained before. He only used one hand to bind her wrists. Let go. Let go of me. Mu Yaja. Yin Shirshir panted softly and glared at him angrily. However, Mu Yaja was unmoved. Pressing his lips tightly against hers, he raised his eyebrows. Why? Didn't you say that you don't know me, HM? The man's sexy chuckle lingered around her ears. He leaned closer and opened his thin lips. His snow-white teeth gently bit her shoulder strap. With a bite, a tug, and a toss of his head, his neat fringe brushed past her cheek. The buttons were loosened by his bite and her shirt was pulled down to her shoulders, revealing her fair and round shoulders. Mu Yaja hugged the back of her neck and unscrupulously traced the outline of her neck with the tip of his tongue. He smelled it with infatuation. Her fair and jade-like skin had the scent of shower gel and her natural fragrance. Yin Shirshir was completely frightened. Both her hands were tightly bound by him. Her voice was trembling and she sounded aggrieved. Don't do it here. Want. That one word was enough to shut her up. She felt shy and embarrassed. This kind of thing was already embarrassing. Now that they were in the car, she was so sensitive that her whole body started to tremble. This man's physical strength was always so shocking. Now that the car was parked on the road, the thought of other cars passing by at any time, if anyone saw this scene, she couldn't wait to dig a hole and bury her blushing face in it. What she didn't know was that Mu Yaja had already ordered people to seal off this long mountain road, and there wouldn't be any cars passing by for the time being. Compared to her, he was more concerned about her being coveted by others. But she didn't know, and fell into a state of panic. Why was it that in front of this man, she was always unable to resist and was at his mercy? He felt a wave of despair in his heart. His eyes stung, and tears fell from his eyes. Muyaja felt that her current appearance was even more lovable. That pair of sparkling eyes, the silent accusation in her eyes, actually made him want to bully her even more. Her fair and tender body made his heart beat faster. In the cool breeze with the fragrance of begonia flowers, the beautiful scenery under the moonlight made her even more beautiful. Muyaja narrowed his eyes. His deep eyes were stained with a few traces of gloominess. He draped a large suit jacket over her body, covering her entire body. Under the cover of the moonlight, he took advantage of her in the car. That suffocating strangulation, her delicate begging for mercy, was like an electric current running through his back, causing his body to immediately tense up. Lowering his head, he bit that enchanting neck to vent his desire and hugged her hands around his shoulders. Yun Shirshir bit her lips tightly, swallowing all the uneasiness and humiliation. Muyaja seemed to be a little dissatisfied with her restraint. He breathed into her ear, "Call my name." Yun Shirshir gasped for breath. Holding on to his shoulders, her face was already full of tears. She looked at the man who still looked calm from the corner of her eye. Suddenly, she couldn't help but feel ashamed and indignant. Muyaja's charming voice was still in her ears. Chapter 209. Muyaja's seductive voice was still ringing in her ears. "Say my name. I like hearing your voice." "No," she panted softly and cried, stubbornly not letting him have his way. However, in this situation, the man seemed to have the ability to make her speak. In the end, Yun Shirshir couldn't help but cry out in grievance, "Muyaja. Do you know me?" "Yes. I know you. What's my name?" "Muyaja. Muyaja." She moaned in pain and broke down. In the midst of their passion, the man lowered his head and kissed her lips. Sweet, so sweet. The fragrance of the dry red spread between his lips and teeth, and he couldn't help but deepen the kiss as he greedily sucked in her mouth. Perhaps it was because she was drunk and gradually forgot about her feelings, but she didn't reject him. Instead, under the guidance of his tongue, she responded timidly. The soft tip of her tongue traced his lips and sucked on his tongue. Her little mouth trembled as she sucked on his lips, licking and tracing. Muyaja couldn't help but have an illusion that he was hugging a cute cat. At this moment, the little fellow was licking his lips to express her affection for him. Compared to a wild kiss, this action was more seductive. His eyes couldn't help but darken a little. If it weren't for his scruples, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to resist devouring her completely in the car. She showed weakness and his actions gradually became gentler. After the deed, she was like a quiet cat curled up in his arms, so tired that she fell asleep. He had taken her in the car, but he still felt more than satisfied. Just like a young man who had stolen the forbidden fruit, he was addicted to it after tasting it for the first time. The car drove all the way to a remote area, but the environment was exceptionally elegant. When the car stopped, the person in his arms still hadn't woken up. Perhaps she felt too embarrassed, so she simply closed her eyes and refused to move. The helper opened the car door and stood by the side looking down. Muyaja carried her out of the car and walked through the luxurious arch of the villa. This was a villa that had just been completed not long ago. The preliminary plans for this villa had been made 15 years ago. At that time, Muyaja's mother was not in good health. In order to nourish her body, Muxing did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to buy a large piece of land in a beautiful suburb. He planned to build a landscape garden for her to recuperate. Muyaja's mother, Jiang Yishan, was doted on by Grandpa Mu. Although this scenic area was far from the city center, it was still worth a lot of money because of the beautiful scenery. At that time, the old man even invited a feng shui master to do an on-site survey. This place was a rare and precious feng shui treasure and a holy land for recuperation. Unfortunately, a beautiful woman had a short life. His mother passed away halfway through the villa's construction. Her death was a huge blow to Musheng, so the project was temporarily shelved. It was only when Muyaja came of age that construction resumed. A year ago, the villa was completed, but it still had not been named. However, relying on its unique and beautiful scenery, it attracted the favor of many rich people. It even became the most expensive villa area in the capital. The sky-high price of a few $100 million per villa was daunting to many people. Chapter 210. This villa was designed in accordance with the Chinese retro garden style, with rockery, flowing water, pavilions, terraces and pavilions. It was elegant yet luxurious. Grandpa Mu just had to casually say that it was under Mu Yaja's name, which made many people in the Mu family jealous. Naturally, Grandpa Mu's love for him was self-evident. However, there was nothing wrong with that. The original intention of this villa was to let Jiang Yishan recuperate. Now that she was no longer around, Grandpa Mu had poured all his love on him. Once they were in the bedroom, Mu Yaja carried her to the bathroom and cleaned her body. Ever since he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he had never served anyone. Inevitably, his actions were clumsy and hurt her from time to time. It was just that Yun Shirshir was so exhausted that she could not even lift her eyelids. When he hurt her, she would open her eyes slightly, but she did not have the energy to complain. When he wiped her body, the man realized that this woman was thinner than he had imagined. Perhaps it was because she had just been breastfeeding, but the areas that were supposed to be plump were rather round. However, he could only hold her wrists with one hand. Her well-defined collarbones were like two pieces of jade, and her pair of arms were so thin that it was as if he could break them with just a little force. Not to mention her slim waist, she was too thin. It was better for women to be a little plump. It seemed that she needed to be nourished well. Could it be that this woman did not gain weight no matter what she ate? How did she survive for the past 6 years? When they first met, she was not this skinny. She still had some meat on her body. Mu Yaja did not know how difficult it was for Yin Shirshir in the past 6 years. When she was in school, she had to take care of Yu, who was breastfeeding. In order to support the family, she had to work multiple jobs. At that time, she was still living with Yin Yeqing. When she returned home, she had to do all the housework under Li Qin's orders. For as long as Yu could remember, she graduated successfully, but because she had to take care of a child alone, she was treated coldly. There was no indomitable man in the family. As a widow and an orphan, she was discriminated against. He turned on the shower and washed the foam off her body. Then he wrapped her in a bathrobe and carried her to the bed. Suddenly, a bell rang from the sofa. Mu Yaja was stunned and walked over. It was her phone that was ringing. She picked it up and saw little Munchkin's cheeky profile picture on the screen. The call was connected, and the childish voice of a child could be heard through the phone. "Mommy, my dearest mommy, when are you coming home? It's so dark and cold at home. Yu is scared. Mommy, come back quickly. Yu made your favorite thumb cake." His voice was so sweet that it was almost coquettish. The arrogance that he had displayed in front of him had faded away. In front of his mommy, he was just like a little boy who had never grown up and loved to act spoiled. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and suddenly recalled how he had poured a bucket of cold water on him that day. In his memory, this child didn't seem to be so soft and adorable. Yin Shirshir is my mommy. She's the woman I'll protect for the rest of my life. I won't allow you to let her suffer in the slightest, let alone make her sad. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to bully my mommy and make her sad? If I see you let my mommy suffer in the slightest bit, I won't let you off. The smell of gunpowder was so strong, yet he pretended to be innocent in front of Yin Shirshir. He was no different from an ordinary 6-year-old child. Chapter 211. This little lad was so mischievous. How could his acting skills be so good at 6 years old? It was not that Mu Yaja was not surprised. In fact, he found it incredulous. To him, this child was like a puzzle. How capable could a 6-year-old child be? An ordinary child of Yin Tianyo's age would only be able to understand a little. The more normal ones might not even be able to speak clearly, and would have to count with their fingers clumsily. He had seen children of his age who were timid when they met strangers. The more timid ones would hide behind their parents. Smart children like Xiao Yichen were considered gifted and had a higher IQ than ordinary children. Although he was usually cold to outsiders, he was still a child at heart. However, he would not be as smart as him, who had already learned to speak human language when he met people and ghosts when he met ghosts. Even to this day, he could not forget how his son had called him by his full name over the phone. His voice did not tremble in the slightest. It was very calm and carried an indescribable coldness and estrangement. This child seemed to already know the identity of his biological father, whom he had never met before, and had even coldly warned him not to provoke his mother. At such a young age, he was especially protective of his mother. Even the slightest harm done to her by the outside world would be infinitely magnified in his eyes to the point that it was unforgivable. 6 years old. He was only 6 years old. What kind of earth-shattering things could he do? He actually dared to boast to him. "Who do you think you are?" He even said, "I won't let you off." Muyaja was alarmed. It was not that he did not have a childhood. When he was 6 years old, he was still a mischievous child living in a greenhouse. Although he matured earlier than his peers, he did not surpass them by much. This child made him a little suspicious. What kind of mature soul was hidden in this little shell of his? On the other end of the phone call, Yin Tianyu was sitting in the study room, playing with the toy in his hand. When he heard the light panting from the receiver, he thought that the signal was bad and asked, "Mommy? Mommy, can you hear you?" "Yes." Muyaja spoke in a deep and mature voice. The moment Yin Tianyu heard his voice, his whole body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. "You, Muyaja?" Once the words left his mouth, it was no longer a childish voice. Instead, it sounded as mature as if two men were having a conversation, facing each other coldly through a microphone. He frowned in surprise and abruptly stood up from the chair, his fingertips trembling. "It's me. Why are you calling me by my name? What else should I call you?" Yin Tianyu sneered and suddenly questioned, "Why do you have my mommy's phone?" "Shoo." Muyaja smiled. "Your mommy is already asleep. Keep your voice down. She's with you." Yin Tianyu's brows furrowed in shock. It was apparent that he had yet to recover from this fact. That was quite a shock. "Didn't I tell you not to provoke my mommy? Last time, didn't you give me a multiple-choice question?" Muyaja kindly reminded him. He was obviously in a good mood as he gave the answer. "I have a choice." Yin Tianyu stroked his chin and thought for a while. "Family or enemy, choose one?" "Mr. Mu, I think you've misunderstood something," Yin Tianyu said coldly. "I regret it.